Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
"How could you do this to us?" he demanded, his voice trembling as he held up the incriminating texts. Her face paled, but she said nothing, the silence louder than any confession. The perfect life they had built, a loving marriage, successful careers, and dreams of a future, was shattered in an instant. Behind closed doors, the truth unraveled. Late-night work meetings, a shared glance with someone else, and a secret that could destroy everything. Who is the other man? How deep does the betrayal go? And what happens when revenge becomes the only answer? Don't miss the shocking twists in this gripping tale of love and deceit. The Commissioner of Health Services finished speaking warmly about this year's winner of the County Physician of the Year award. He gestured widely, inviting the honoree to step up to the podium to receive her award. She was a striking redhead who appeared much younger than her 33 years. Simone O'Reilly was a tall woman, with her beautiful red hair falling gently to her pale shoulders. She stood out as the most engaging person in the room, and she was my wife. I'm James O'Reilly, but my friends call me Jimmy. Simone and I have been married for over 10 years. When we wed, I was 20, and she was 22. Simone often jokes that she married someone much younger. In many ways, though, I feel like the more mature partner. From a young age, my wife was determined to become a doctor. She devoted herself to her studies, leaving little time for social activities. I first met her at a party that celebrated our acceptance into medical school. It was the spring semester. The Deltas were hosting a spring bash and invited the Sigmas. A few of my Sigma friends convinced me to join them. The party lasted well into the night. Early in the morning, I saw a tall redhead being guided toward a back room by a few people who had clearly been drinking too much. I couldn't just stand by and watch. I stepped in to talk to the three people who seemed not to understand what was happening. One of them got angry and tried to hit me, and that moment changed everything. I only needed to defend myself once, and soon my friends joined in to help. By the time the campus security arrived, a few people were on the ground, and my friends were caught up in the commotion. Yes, I was one of those Sigma guys, often viewed as less responsible. Thankfully, the redhead managed to explain to the authorities that we had come to her aid. This act of kindness set us on a path that led to our marriage just a year later, at the end of her first year of medical school. Simone was my senior in age and experience in her career, but she was not as worldly as I was. After earning her medical degree and my law degree, we were raising 2 children together. She earned the title of Physician of the Year for her work with Doctors Without Borders. From the very start, I knew how lucky I was to have met Simone that night. Life has a strange way of working out. Was it just chance, or was it something more? When we met, Simone was full of promise, a devoted pre-med student ready to blossom. She was on the verge of becoming something incredible. I wasn't the only one who believed this. My skeptical friends often looked at me with surprise, thinking I had stumbled into something special. Why would someone like Jimmy O'Reilly be with a woman like that? They must have thought. I was just an average person, not particularly good in school or sports. But I was definitely smarter than many of my college classmates, and I didn't have much trust in them. Simone, on the other hand, was full of hope and believed in the goodness of people. I must admit that I found this quality in her more appealing than her looks. She was beautiful, but her true value lay in the kindness that shone through her actions. The word altruism describes people like Simone well. She chose medicine not for money or status. She wanted to make a difference. She couldn't stand to see anyone in pain. If a quiet friend needed help, Simone was always there to lend a hand. Whenever my friends overindulged, as they often did, Simone was there to ensure they got home safely. She cared for them and helped them recover from their mishaps. She never judged or criticized. Instead, she guided them gently, much like a caring mentor. Men were drawn to her beauty, but what made them fall for her was her kind heart. My relationship with my future wife was unique. Once Simone held my hand, it felt like a promise. We were a couple, and I was her first serious partner. We committed to one another right away, and she made sure nothing would distract us. "We're together, right?" she would confirm. I wasn't going to argue. I knew how lucky I was to be with her, and of course I loved Simone deeply. Anyone with a good heart would feel the same. So one Thursday afternoon, I left my office early to attend the County Medical Society meeting. I hadn't been invited, but I learned about it from the county clerk's wife, who was a hospital administrator. When I went to record a document, he congratulated me on my wife's award, and I acted like I knew all about it. Simone hadn't mentioned the award or the meeting to me. She usually kept her work and home life separate, so I was going to the event without her knowledge. Normally, this wouldn't have raised any concerns for me. However, not hearing about the award made me curious. I wanted to see her get the recognition and listen to her acceptance speech. I was proud of Simone. But since her return from a trip abroad, she seemed distant. The warm connection we once shared had turned cold. At first, I thought it was just fatigue. She came back looking more tired than before. But as she regained her energy, our closeness did not return. The person had returned, but her loving side seemed missing. Simone looked to connect again with our daughters, Vicky, who was 8, and Beth, who was 6. However, with me, there felt like there was an invisible wall. For 3 months, I held on, hoping my wife would come back to the warm relationship we used to share. Something had changed that connection, but I wasn't sure what it was. I could not think of anything that would explain the distance that had formed between us. I quietly walked into the big banquet hall of the Gideon Hotel. Simone had not started to speak yet. The room was nearly full, with about 1,500 people present. I slipped into a spot next to the bar, which had been ready before. The bartender had stepped away when the speaker started, but 2 tall, well-dressed men were still there, leaning on the bar. One of them I recognized as Tony Caroso, a doctor at Memorial Hospital where Simone worked. The other man looked sharp in a fancy suit. I guessed that the man in the suit was also a doctor. He seemed like someone who enjoyed being at events. Just like Caroso, Tony had a reputation for making uncomfortable comments to female colleagues and didn't stop when they said no. I knew he had tried this several times with Simone, and I had seen it happen once. She had always said no firmly, but he didn't back off. I stood behind them at the bar. They were facing the room just like I was, and they didn't notice me. I was close enough to hear what they were saying. "I plan to talk to her," said the man in the nice suit, nodding toward my wife. Simone was walking to the podium to start her speech. "Don't let her red hair fool you. She's not easy to approach," Tony replied. "Maybe once, but not anymore. I heard she was very outgoing while she was in Africa. She was known to be lively," said the other man. "Well, that was a long time ago," Tony said. "Yeah, but once someone tries something new, they never go back entirely," the man in the suit said. "Want to make a bet on it?" Tony challenged. "Sure, let's double what you owe me for that little favor I helped you with," the suited man said. "Deal, and to make it fun, I'll give it a try myself," Tony said, sharing a confident laugh with the other man. At that moment, my wife began to speak. "I want everyone to know how deeply honored I feel to receive this award from my colleagues. But honestly, I need to say that you have given this award to the wrong person. This is an award for those who have made sacrifices for others. My work with Médecins Sans Frontières was not a hardship for me. It was the others who made the real sacrifices. My daughters, who went without their mother for 14 months, my husband, who took on the role of a single parent during that time, and all the family and friends who stepped in to help while I was away. We often forget those who stay behind to support us. They make the daily efforts that often go unnoticed. As I accept this award for my family and friends, I want them and everyone here to know that I appreciate their sacrifices. So do the many thousands helped by Doctors Without Borders. We, the medical workers, and our patients owe a lot to the families who have given up their loved ones for a long time to help bring medical care to those in most need. So, for my family and the other families of volunteers, I accept this award with great respect and honor." When Simone finished speaking, the crowd stood, and the applause echoed loudly. "I'm glad you caught that," someone said next to me. I turned to see Claire Hudson beside me. She was standing on her toes to speak into my ear. At 5'4", she needed to stretch a bit. Claire was my wife's favorite surgical nurse, and Simone greatly appreciated having her help in the operating room. Claire had 3 kids, but she looked much younger. In her mid-30s, she had a young-looking figure, and her dark hair had no gray. People admired her for her youthful looks. She was married to Declan Hudson, one of the best men I knew. Deke was the top diesel mechanic in our area. If you needed the best, you went to him. Declan, known as Deke, was a big man. Though he looked tough with his bald head, he had a gentle heart. Claire took charge in their family. Together, they were our closest friends, and we often spent time together. Our home was usually lively with their 3 boys and our 2 girls. It had been the same while Simone was gone. I wondered how Simone managed without Claire by her side during her time in Africa. "I'm very proud of her," I told Claire. "She cares for you deeply," Claire replied. I glanced over to see the bartender refilling the drinks for Tony Caroso and his friend. They took their drinks and moved back into the crowd, which had resumed sitting. "Who's that with Dr. Caroso?" I asked. "Oh, that's Dr. Eshi Faraji, our new head of surgery," Claire said with a slight pause. I could tell she was holding back something personal. As a lawyer, I sensed her hesitation but decided not to press for more details, since I had just seen my wife accept her award. It was time for me to pick up my daughters from school. "I have to go," I said to Claire, checking my watch. "Tell Simone I heard her speech." "Sure," Claire said as I turned to go. As I drove to the elementary school, I thought about what Dr. Faraji said about my wife. When we first met, the woman who would become a top doctor in the state was different, a hard-working student. We were both waiting for the right time. Being known as the smartest person on campus didn't help my chances with girls any more than it did for most guys. But everything changed with Simone. After our first meeting, I pushed aside my doubts and focused on the good things between us. Simone was a banker's daughter and an excellent student. If it weren't for some trouble with a few disruptive classmates, we might not have met. We attended the same university, but we studied very different subjects. She was preparing for medical school while I was still deciding on my major. My grades were okay, but I was nowhere near her level. We dated all year, and shortly after she graduated, we took a big step in our relationship. When Simone started medical school, she got an apartment in Albany near the medical center. Her father paid for her living expenses, but even his help did not cover her tuition completely. Simone ended up with a lot of student debt. I became a regular part of her life, supporting her studies while I worked at an electrical utility company. Looking back, we should have kept things more private. Eventually, her parents found out and were understandably upset. It was a big change for them to accept that their daughter was growing up. Still, despite their worries, we got engaged by Christmas and married the following June. I was in my junior year, now married and feeling fairly carefree. That changed during my senior year. I never worried much about our choices, as we both felt secure in our relationship. Simone was taking care of herself, but things got more complicated when she told me she was pregnant. "I thought you were on the pill?" I asked. "I stopped last month. This way I'll have the baby between school terms." "But then what?" "It's all planned out. Don't worry," she reassured me. In some ways, she was right. Both our families were eager for grandchildren. Simone was an only child, and her mom was excited about the idea of grandkids. My parents were just as interested since my older sister had embraced her own life choices. To me, Tara was always my big sister. She is 5'11", a little shorter than I am now, but growing up, she was always taller. People often said she was pretty, and she attracted a lot of attention. In high school, Tara was known as the popular girl who had many options. Tara always had dates for dances, but found it hard to keep a steady boyfriend. My mom would tell her friends how Tara was enjoying her choices and keeping her options open. Once my sister started college, she changed her style to something more gender-neutral. My mother thought it was just a phase, until Tara introduced her girlfriend to the family. Since Tara was not interested in starting a family, my parents turned to their daughter-in-law, Simone. She surprised us with the birth of little Victoria Tara Louise O'Reilly, who weighed 8 pounds 2 ounces. My sister became a caring aunt and moved in with us, working as an officer with the city police. Together, Tara and I took on most of the parenting duties. Simone often tries to do too much at once. Given the slightest chance, she wants to do everything. I truly believe you can't be a full-time medical student and a full-time mother to a newborn. Simone, of course, disagreed. If I hadn't stepped in, she would have overworked herself, struggling with both her studies and motherhood. This led to some challenges in our marriage. Simone found it hard to balance being a loving wife and mother, while I tried to be the responsible husband who set limits. I would say, "You focus on your studies while Tara and I care for Vicky," and manage the home. Over time, my sister and I developed a system that even Simone agreed was best for Vicky. It was Tara who encouraged me to think about getting a law degree. "You wouldn't be a good police officer, Jimmy, but maybe a lawyer?" Tara suggested. That was a tough time. I was working, looking after my daughter, and attending law school. I managed to get through it all thanks to Tara and Simone. Strangely, the challenges I faced helped me grow into a better person. Simone and Tara came to my law school graduation, but neither could stay for the party my parents threw afterward since they both had evening jobs. Little did we know, 6 years later, I would be defending Tara against false accusations aimed at removing her from her job. Tara had never had an easy time in the male-dominated police department. Eventually, we accepted a settlement and an apology, and Tara started her own security company. Meanwhile, I had made a few enemies among the serving officers, but it felt worth it. By then, little Beth had arrived, and our lives had found a nice rhythm. Simone had finished her surgical training, and I had a small law practice. We were content. Then Kevin McFarlane returned from Liberia. Kevin, an emergency doctor, was a medical school friend of Simone's. Kevin came back with stories about his work in Africa. As far as doctors go, I felt I would rather have someone else in an emergency. He was an overachiever academically, but struggled in the practice of medicine, which I saw as more art than science. By the time Kevin returned, Simone was a board-certified pediatric surgeon, one of the most respected and high-paying medical specialties. Simone and I had just started to improve our financial situation. She earned 3 times my salary, but it wasn't the money that drove her. "I can't stop thinking about what Kevin said," she whispered to me. "No," I replied. "You can't go. I know I have many responsibilities here. I must think about the girls. I can't just go. And I'm not comfortable with you leaving," I said. "I wouldn't be in danger and I could help a lot of people. It's only for a year." Simone wanted my support for her decision to work with Doctors Without Borders for a year. She believed I could find a way to make things work. I always tried to solve problems, which made me a decent lawyer, even if I wasn't always straightforward. Simone knew I would do anything for her. But could I let her take such a big risk? "It's just too risky," I stated. I had heard Kevin's words, and I understood how they might appeal to her. I looked into it, and it didn't ease my worries. The group went to places others avoided, facing many difficulties. Their facilities had been affected in unstable regions, and healthcare workers often faced tough situations. Everything told me to stop Simone from going, but deep down, I knew I couldn't. Another woman might have been happy with a good job and family life. But Simone was not just another woman or doctor. There were people in need, especially children who needed her skills. She wanted to go, and I understood that. I could have stopped her. I probably should have. But I loved her. And when you really love someone, you often sense what they need even more than your own feelings. So in the end, I stood by her. I hugged our girls while Simone sat with us, explaining why she had to go help children in Africa. When Simone told the family she would leave her surgical training for a year to work with Doctors Without Borders, it was Tara who stepped up first to support me. By then, Vicky was 7, and Beth, short for Elizabeth, was 5. Tara brought Lisa into the mix. My sister is very strong and has a more boyish look now, but she still has her charm. Tara likes her partners to be more feminine, and Lisa fits that description perfectly. She is small but can wear anything well, with long blonde hair that adds to her appeal. When Simone went to Africa, Lisa played a positive role in my daughters' lives, buying them clothes and sharing their favorite movies. Tara and I shared the duties of being parents. I needed that support. With my wife away, I found myself not only taking care of the kids alone, but also trying to pay our bills. My wife's new job barely covered her school loans. I had my own loans, the house payment, and daily expenses to manage. A typical criminal lawyer might earn around $50,000 a year after paying expenses. At that time, I was just getting by at $60,000 because I spent every free moment looking for new clients. I wrote wills for almost everyone I knew. Most of my time went into helping clients with minor legal issues. We were managing, and there was some success, but I really relied on Tara and Lisa's support. What troubled me most was the news from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I never wanted Simone to go there. I couldn't understand why her family wasn't enough for her or how a mother of young children could put herself in a risky situation. Everything I heard about the Congo made it sound like a place to stay away from. In the first 2 months of her absence, she was in France for training. We stayed in touch through calls and emails, but as time passed, we communicated less. The change wasn't slow. It felt quick. The calls grew rare and the letters hardly came. Something shifted during that 3rd month when she was in the Congo, and I never found out why. What I knew was that my wife hadn't returned to our life together. For 14 months, I focused solely on our children. I began to think about what Simone was experiencing away from home. Had she changed in ways I hadn't realized? I worried about her safety, but also had doubts about us. As I drove up in my Honda CR-V, my daughters waited at the curb. Vicky had taken charge as the responsible older sister. She held Beth's hand and waited patiently for me to arrive. Their mother's absence had made my daughters more mature and less reliant on others. "Hi, Dad," Vicky said, opening the door and helping her sister inside. "What are we having for dinner?" Beth asked as she secured herself in the car seat. "I think Aunt Tara is bringing liver and onions," I joked. "No, she's not. Lisa won't let her," Beth replied firmly. "Dad!" Vicky exclaimed. "Well, your mother will be late and Aunt Tara really likes liver." "Yuck!" the girls said together. When we got home, the girls rushed into the kitchen, still complaining about liver, but their frowns turned to smiles when they saw pizza boxes on the table. Aunt Lisa assured them that she would never let Aunt Tara serve them liver. Simone didn't make it home for dinner, but I didn't expect her to. There would be a gathering for important guests after the meeting, and Simone planned to use that time to ask for more help for Doctors Without Borders. She got home around 8, just as I was getting the girls ready for bed. Tara and Lisa stayed until I had the girls tucked in. They mentioned wanting to discuss something important. Once the girls were settled, Tara opened a bottle of wine she had brought and sat on the sofa in the living room. "I want you to be the first to know that I have asked Lisa to marry me," Tara started. Simone quickly offered her congratulations, and I followed right after. Despite knowing how close the two women were, it still surprised me. "Go on," Lisa encouraged. Well, the reason we want to marry is that what your sister is trying to say is that we plan to marry and start a family," Lisa added. "Okay, well, you will make your parents happy," I replied. Simone was fidgeting beside me. I sensed I was missing something the three women seemed to understand. "Jim, we want you to be the biological father," Tara said. I was taken aback, but Lisa continued before I could respond. "It's not just about you being Tara's brother. I want my children to have the kind of father I believe you would be. I can't think of a better person for the role. We're only asking for a donation," Lisa explained. They had put me on the spot and I could feel the tension next to me from Simone. "Can I have some time to think?" I asked carefully. "Of course," they agreed, and we shifted the conversation to their wedding plans until they left. Simone sat on the edge of our bed, wearing an old robe over her nightgown. Before her trip to Africa, she had been more open with me, but now it felt like she was keeping her distance. I could see she was worried. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "About what?" "You know what I mean. Donating to Tara and Lisa," she replied. "Honestly, I'm not sure. I feel a bit flattered, I guess." "What were you thinking?" she pressed. "Have we grown so apart that you can't see how I feel about this?" "Well, I didn't think you were happy about it, but you didn't say no, and it's just a sperm donation." "I was thinking about what this means for the girls." "I don't think anyone planned to tell them until they are much older," she said. "But what if something happened to Lisa and Tara? Those would be your children. If the worst happened, they would still be my children, no matter who the father is. Tara is my sister. Our kids would be her nieces. She and Lisa showed me how important that is while you were away. We owe them a lot. It would be hard for me to turn them down for such a small request," I explained. Simone did not look pleased. "I want to think about it and discuss it more when I'm feeling less tired," she said. "That's fine, sleep on it. We can talk about it tomorrow evening." "I can't. I promised to go out with my coworkers to celebrate tomorrow night. I got an award today, and Claire said you know about it." "What were you up to tonight?" Simone didn't seem pleased with my question. "Today was for the higher-ups. I was out with the hospital board after the award ceremony. They might offer me a better job." Oh, and when were you planning to celebrate with your family? Please, Jimmy, don't act like that. I'm doing my best, she said, pausing to breathe. Everything feels off. When you leave like I did, you think things will be the same when you come back. But they aren't. Everyone has moved on. And you have changed too. You saw things, experienced things. Not all of them were bad, but some were too much to handle. Suddenly, she started crying. I went to her and wrapped my arm around her. For a moment, it felt like the old days, like we were a couple facing challenges together. But then that moment passed, and she pulled away, lost in her thoughts. That night I went to bed feeling the distance between us. Even though we were close physically, our emotional bond felt strained. Since Simone came back, our connection had changed, leaving me longing for what we used to share. The closeness we had quickly returned, but something important was missing. It felt like our relationship had turned into a routine without the love and warmth we once had. Simone seemed to be fighting her own silent struggles, and I wasn't sure how to bridge the gap that had grown between us. Our daily lives had become a pattern. It seemed like Simone had a deep need for something that had changed. The woman I used to know felt different, almost like a new person. My morning started at 5:45. After showering and shaving, I woke the girls. They were good about it and headed to the bathroom while I got dressed. When I was ready, I helped them with their clothes. We had made this routine work over the past year. After breakfast, we packed their lunches for school. We went to the garage where I would drop them off at school before heading to court. Most days were the same, but Fridays were a bit earlier since I needed to meet the assistant district attorney before court sessions. The judge officially started at 9:30, but he usually didn't arrive until after 10 o'clock, depending on her. She would come in at 8 to start discussing cases. As the girls and I were leaving, Simone appeared in her robe. "Give your mother a hug goodbye," I said. "Goodbye, Mom," they said, giving her a quick hug. "What about a hug from my husband?" Simone called just as I was almost out the door. I turned around and gave her a soft kiss on the forehead. "I won't be too late tonight," she promised. I left Simone knowing she would go for a run. This was another change since her time away. The old Simone liked Pilates and yoga, but now she was all about running miles every morning and even more on her days off. She looked fit and healthy, which only seemed to make the gap between us wider. At the courthouse, the assistant district attorney, ADA, was sitting in a small room off to the side. There was just enough space for a small table where the young ADA worked. A chair was ready for the defense attorney. My colleagues in criminal defense were lined up in the hall. We were a friendly group, even if I didn't know many of them well. My fellow defense lawyers accepted my mixed reputation. It's tough to keep a flawless image when defending clients involved in tricky situations. Sometimes defending clients meant bending the rules a bit. I might have changed a few statements or guided a client on how to deal with evidence before the police arrived. I was good at my job, even if I wasn't always following the law. When my turn came to speak with the ADA, I had my points ready. I had 5 cases to go over, all related to police observations at a local bar from the previous Friday night. The bar owner was unhappy with the police presence, especially since there were no DWI arrests. Every driver stopped after leaving the bar passed the breath test. Still, 5 tickets for disorderly conduct and driving while impaired were given out. Before I could say anything, the ADA slid her notes across to me. "ACD," she said, referring to the adjourned contemplating dismissal designation. "ACD is basically a dismissal of the charges, the best result you can hope for on a first visit." "Which one?" I asked, surprised. "All 5, she replied. "Look closely at the charge sheet." She pointed at the initials next to each client's name. The letters SK were written clearly. The district attorney was Stanislaus Katsaros, known as Stan. He was very proud of his background. The saying goes, "Be careful with gifts, but don't question them too much." This was indeed a gift, one that had just earned me a significant fee in each of the 5 cases, $4,000 in total. The question was, what did Stan want in return? Politicians rarely act without a reason. If Stan wanted something, he hadn't asked yet. The ADA looked at me with a shrug, suggesting she had no better idea about what was happening than I did. I was back in my office by 10 a.m. I found June waiting for me. June is what I call my staff. She is a 28-year-old woman with 5 kids. The oldest girl is 14, and the other 4 are all under 10. The 5 children have 3 fathers, and June has never been married. She is skilled at keeping my schedule and handling paperwork. June wouldn't fit well in a big law firm, but I work alone, and this arrangement works for me. She spends a lot of time each day on the phone talking to her mother, who lives with her and takes care of June's kids. "Dear Stanislas Katsaros wants to see you," June said. "When?" I asked. "This afternoon at his office around 3. I wondered what he could want from me. Stan greeted me at his office with his chief assistant, Betty Gray. There were always rumors about Stan and Betty. Stan was in his 50s and Betty was in her 40s. She was not traditionally beautiful, but she was still quite appealing. Despite the rumors, I had reliable information that their relationship was just professional. Stan was married to a woman who was 20 years younger and very attractive. Betty also had a few admirers, though not many people knew about her circle of friends. Stan and Betty invited me to sit on the old, worn leather sofa in the DA's office and offered me coffee. Stan filled his cup halfway with cream and sugar, added coffee, and then started our conversation. "Have you heard about the issues at Van Patten Correctional Facility?" he asked. Of course I had. Even with my busy life, I couldn't miss a major story like that. Van Patten started as a minimum security prison for men. Most inmates were there for only a few months and spent only some nights and weekends behind bars. Due to lawsuits over crowded conditions at women's prisons nearby, the state changed Van Patten into a medium security place for women. This change included building a fence and adding security measures. Female prisons usually have fewer security problems than male ones. The current issue involves claims about how female inmates are treated by male officers. Complaints have been made to the State Commission on Corrections about these matters. This commission was formed after a major incident in 1971 and watches over the prisons, but it cannot enforce changes on its own. The local district attorney is responsible for prosecuting any criminal actions. Wrongdoing by an officer with an inmate is serious. Stan Katsaros needs to handle the complaints that the commission is looking into. However, officers often know each other well and have strong union backing, making legal action against them a delicate issue. Typically, cases against correctional staff fall under federal law. New York only has 4 federal districts, each with appointed U.S. attorneys. Every one of the 62 counties has its own district attorney, DA. The local DA usually handles cases involving inmates or civilian staff, while uniformed personnel mostly fall under federal oversight. However, no federal prosecutor wants to take on difficult cases. Convicting someone is very hard, even with strong evidence about a crime involving someone already in prison. The U.S. Attorney had ignored a report that talked about serious misconduct at Van Patten Correctional Facility. Now, the state was pushing Stan to take action. Many people, both from downstate and upstate, were worried about the idea of bad behavior in prisons, so while I knew about Stan's issue, I didn't think it had anything to do with me. "I know about the report," I said. Stan got right to it. "The governor wants a special prosecutor," he said, pausing for a moment. "I wasn't sure at first, but I'm open to it if I can suggest someone." I looked at Stan, then at Betty, and back again. I couldn't believe he was really thinking of me or that the governor would agree. "And what did the governor say?" I asked. "He's fine with it as long as it's a registered Democrat who has no connections to law enforcement or my office. I checked this morning. You're still registered as a Democrat." That sounded off to me. I hardly knew Stan Katsaros. Our few encounters had been through his team, and they were mostly difficult. Yet here he was, suggesting me for an important job. Sure, I had the right background. I was a Democrat, though not an active one, and I had criticized the local police department because of my sister. Still, something about this felt wrong. Stan seemed to see my doubt and quickly made his main point. "You might worry about pay. I suggested $175 an hour to the governor, and he agreed. Plus, you don't need to stress about getting paid. The state will cover all expenses as part of my deal with the governor," Stan said with a smile. "Legal fees can be tricky. You could charge $350 an hour, but clients usually don't pay the full amount. In criminal cases, you often try to get a large payment up front, knowing it might be the only money you receive. If the client stops paying, You can't leave the case until the judge says it's okay, which rarely happens. Special prosecutors are different. There's no upfront payment. The bill goes to a government office, usually the county. County leaders usually don't like paying extra for prosecutors when they already pay the DA's salary and expenses. However, if the state is covering the costs, all that's needed is a submitted invoice. You might have to wait 3 to 6 months to get paid, but you would eventually receive your money. I was already doing some quick math in my head. This would mean at least 3,000 hours of work, and at $175 an hour, that would add up to more than $500,000 over the next 2 years. Even with higher office costs, it might still bring in about $150,000 more each year. For someone like me, who only earned $60,000 the year before, this was a lot of money. It seemed almost too good to be true, but I couldn't refuse the opportunity. Betty explained how to set up an appointment with the governor's office. She had a draft of my resume and a recommendation from Stan. She suggested we spend the next 2 days working on everything so we could hopefully finalize the appointment by the following week. I left Stan's office feeling a bit overwhelmed. I didn't return to my office until 4 o'clock, where Tara was waiting for me. As soon as I closed the door, she started talking about why she was there. "Lisa and I don't want to put pressure on you," she said. "We noticed that Simone seemed unsure. We don't want to create any difficulties in your marriage. You and Lisa aren't the reason for my marriage issues, and what you asked is fair, given what you two have done for our daughters. Simone will come around, just give her some time," I assured her. "Still," she began, but I interrupted her. "Let's put that aside. I need your help with a work matter." I explained Stan Katsaros's proposal. Tara seemed more doubtful than I was, but for different reasons. "You want to go after correction officers based on what people with questionable backgrounds say?" she asked. "Because every one of your witnesses is likely to have some sort of record, from minor offenses to more serious convictions," Tara said, showing the police officer's side of her personality. "Still, it is a case of misconduct," I replied. "According to the law, a person is not able to give consent if they are A, under 17 years old, or B, mentally disabled, or C, mentally incapacitated, or D, physically helpless, or E, in state custody," I said while reading from the law book. "Right, and we only need 12 people on a jury to win a case," Tara responded. "No, what I need is for my investigator to find solid proof," I replied. "Is that all?" "Yes, but I'll assist. I plan to act in a way that looks a bit ineffective while you work behind the scenes to gather the real evidence. I will keep the focus on me so you can do your job. Now, I need you to start right away." It was a tough task, maybe too hard to handle, but I didn't really have much to lose besides my not-so-great reputation. It had been a long day for me, but there is no break for parents. I still needed to pick up my daughters, feed them, and keep them entertained until bed. They probably had a long day, too. I managed to get them to bed and asleep by 9. After that, I did the dishes, tidied up the kitchen, and put away the leftover dinner before I sat down to wait for Simone. I thought I might settle things with Simone before dealing with the special prosecutor job. I figured there might not be another chance to talk later. I must have dozed off on the couch. I woke up after midnight and noticed my wife was still out. It was already after 1:30 when I heard a car in the driveway. I peeked out the living room window. The garage light was on, and I could see a Porsche parked outside. Simone usually drives a BMW. It looked like someone had driven her home. The Porsche had a woman and a man in the front seats, but I couldn't make out who they were. The woman leaned towards the man, and he pulled her closer, but then they broke apart, and she shook her head. She got out of the car and walked toward the house. The light was bright enough for me to recognize my wife and see the license plate on the Porsche. It seemed they hadn't noticed me at the window, as the garage light was shining right at them and the house was dark. I returned to the couch as Simone walked in. When she turned on the lights, she looked surprised to find me there. "You're awake," she said just as the Porsche drove away. "Did someone drive you home?" I asked, acting like I hadn't seen anything. "Yes, I left my car at the hospital and rode back with Claire," she replied. There was a brief pause as I looked at her. "Well, I need some rest." "You coming?" she said, heading up the stairs to the bedrooms on the second floor. She was quick, already preparing for bed by the time I made it to our room. "You're very late," I said. "Yes, sorry. We were having a good time." "I was hoping we could talk," I said. "Let's talk tomorrow when we both feel better," she replied. She gave me a quick touch on the cheek and went into the bathroom to get ready for bed. In the morning, she was gone when I woke up. It was her day off, and she went for her morning run. In the afternoon, Claire and Deke came over with their boys and decided to have a barbecue. Between grilling and watching the kids, we were all busy, so Simone and I didn't get a chance to talk. Once we finally got the kids settled, Deke pulled me aside with a couple of beers. "How are things going?" he asked. "Okay, I guess. Why do you ask?" I replied. "Claire mentioned that you two are having some issues, adjusting to things." "Oh? What made her think that?" My question made Deke uneasy. It was clear he was trying to get more information from me. "Just some things. So everything is okay between you two?" "No, it's not, and Claire knows that, which is why she sent you to ask," I replied. "Sorry, but she's worried, and I guess I am too. You two were really close. Maybe you should talk to someone, like a counselor," he suggested. Deke was truly concerned and was caught in the middle. I could tell that his wife often took charge in their marriage, and Claire was close to Simone, so it seemed like Claire or Simone was trying to find out what was going on through Deke. "I think this is a result of Simone being away, and if she spends more time with her family, things will get better," I said. Deke seemed to believe me, but I wondered if the others would. Sunday is usually a quiet day, but Simone had to work at the hospital, so we didn't get to talk that weekend. Even though I told Deke I was all right, I was bothered by my wife's connection with the man who drove the fancy car. I had little time to dwell on that, though, because the governor's office called first thing Monday, asking for my resume. Later, they set up a meeting for the next day at the Capitol. The room on the second floor of the Capitol building was small. The young woman who stood up from behind the desk looked to be in her 20s. She had long auburn hair and large brown eyes. She was well-dressed and seemed very connected. "Thanks for coming, Mr. O'Reilly," she said. "I'm Carrie Wilson." It appeared I would not be meeting with the governor, but with a junior aide instead. "Please take a seat. This won't take long. I just have a few questions," she said, motioning for me to sit. "I see you graduated from a state university and have a law degree from Albany Law," she noted, showing a bit of her Ivy League knowledge. "Yes, is this a job interview?" "Not exactly. The governor just wants to make sure there isn't any conflict of interest," she explained. "I'm not linked to the Van Patten district attorney or anyone on his team. I don't know anyone at the Department of Corrections either. I know the chairperson of the Commission on Corrections, since I attended university with his son, but I doubt he remembers me," I said. "Well, you seem like an unusual choice for Mr. Katsaros to recommend," she commented. "Yes, I agree, and I was quite honored by his choice. Maybe he values my abilities," I replied. "All right, please wait a moment," she said as she got up and left the room. I wasn't sure how I felt about her. She seemed a bit arrogant. When she returned, the governor was with her. Governor Kincaid was tall and had a strong presence. "Happy to have you with us, Jimmy," Kincaid said, shaking my hand. The governor gave me my appointment, and Miss Wilson guided me out. My next stop was the Commission on Corrections. Commissioner Michael Tillman Sr. was in charge there. He used to be the Deputy Commissioner for Programs with the Department of Correctional Services, which is known as DOCS. It's the biggest employer among all state agencies. The programs include counseling, education, and other services meant to help inmates. While Mike Tillman had worked in programs, he started in security services. He had a chance to be commissioner but was overlooked for Anthony Abrasso, a lawyer from the department council. Although Abrasso was a lawyer, he was known to make poor decisions. He had connections with the more controversial side of the Democratic Party, which did not make him well-liked by the current reform leaders. I knew Mike Tillman as a reliable person who, while fair, understood the political climate. "Nice to see you again, Jimmy," Commissioner Tillman said when I walked into his office. "Thank you, Commissioner," I replied. "No need for that. Just call me Mike," he said. "You're here about the Van Patten CF report, I assume." "Yes, I've been appointed special prosecutor. The governor's office informed me. Miss Wilson," Mike added. "Well, if I could look at the full report and the supporting documents," I said. The public report did not reveal the names of the inmate victims or the accused officials. I needed that information, along with all the evidence used in the report. I expected that. I have a conference room ready for you. It's locked, and here is the key. Just ask if you want to make copies, he said. If we proceed with charges, I may need your records, I noted. If you do charge anyone, I'll get you the records, Mike replied. You seem confident I will find enough evidence, I said. Yes, I believe in you, he said. Mike was the father of a friend from college. Tom Tillman was there the night I ensured Simone was safe. Tom may not have been the brightest, but he was a solid ally in difficult times. I didn't know Mike well, yet he surprisingly valued my abilities. Is there anything specific you think I should focus on? I asked. No, it's all there. I don't want to influence your investigation, he replied. I left Mike's office, and a secretary led me to a room filled with boxes of documents. I started with the box labeled 1. There were about 30 boxes in total. 2 hours later, and not even a quarter through, I sensed something was wrong. This investigation seemed incomplete. It was clear that there had been some improper interactions between officers and inmates, but the commission's findings didn't support any solid claims. The case began when a former inmate stepped forward. Teresa Ryan was a recovering addict who had been found guilty of possession with the intent to sell. She was given a 10-year sentence and had served 5 years. After her release, she joined the Franciscan Sisters. As a novice nun, she decided to share her story publicly. Her account was clear about who was involved and what happened, making her seem like a strong witness. However, she chose not to testify. All she hoped for was that the situation she had witnessed would come to an end. She wanted forgiveness for those involved, not punishment. Martyrs don't make good witnesses. I realized I couldn't force the nun to testify. An uncooperative victim can turn the prosecution's case upside down. The last thing a prosecutor needs is for the victim to seek forgiveness and to justify the situation from the witness stand. The other witnesses lined up by the commission were former inmates, women who were not as reformed as Sister Teresa. They all had one thing in common. Their stories were old. None could testify about anything that had happened in the last 5 years. The time limit for legal action on these cases was only 5 years, making their complaints irrelevant. It didn't seem right why investigate at all if the main witness would not testify and the other cases were too old. Once again, it felt like there was something hidden, something unsaid. I needed to speak with Tara and find a way to connect these old cases to the current issues. Offenders often repeat their actions. Maybe my sister could find a connection. I left the COC offices confused but determined. Tara had little information to share. Yes, there were a few cases of misconduct between officers and inmates, but not as many as expected. The real problem at Van Patten was that it was understaffed and too crowded. But I have a new lead, Tara said. Oh, remember Nancy Silverman? Short and spirited, I replied. Well, yes, she thinks she might have a lead for me, Tara added, and we left it at that. Next, I planned to visit Van Patten CF, the place where things happened. But first, it was Simone's day off, and that evening her mother was taking our girls to see the latest Disney movie. I needed to go home and discuss our issues. I had already checked the license on the Porsche, and not surprisingly, it belonged to Eshe Faraji, Maryland. My wife and I had some important talks ahead. When I got home, Simone was waiting for me. She looked lovely in a green dress that suited her perfectly. She offered me a glass filled with a drink. After returning home, martinis had become Simone's choice of drink. She hadn't drunk much before, but things had changed since then, which worried me considering how she acted after a few drinks. Noticing my hesitation, she said, "Not what you expected." I thought we were going to talk. We will, but later. We both enjoyed our drinks, which were quite strong. HTTP code 502 from API, 502 bad gateway Cloudflare. I've been talking with her about our issue, and she suggested we go to counseling together. But first, I need to be honest with you. She said I should talk to you when you're in a good mood and remind you of the love we share. Anna is the short, stout therapist, I pointed out. Yes, she is very skilled and has experience in these cases. Cases? Jimmy, my love, please listen. Right now, let's not analyze everything. I could see we had problems as soon as I got off the plane. I could see your doubts in your eyes. Okay, But this is not just my problem, I said. I agree. This is our problem, and I take my share of the blame. But we need to work together to fix it, she replied. How do we do that? I asked. First, I need to talk openly about what is bothering us, she said, pausing to think. I was preparing myself as she started to speak. I was ready for the tough times, warm weather, dirty conditions, and all the bugs. The bad food was no big deal. You might lose a bit of weight, but so what? You are helping people who need it desperately. This was the biggest adventure of my life, and each day brought new successes. What I saw was hard to explain, but making that suffering easier is an amazing feeling. It's the constant worry that really gets to you in the end. It's hard to know who you can trust. We lost people. Friends caught up in the chaos, some we found later, deeply changed by what they had gone through. She paused and looked at me. Simone's eyes searched mine for understanding. I wrapped my arms around her and said, "You knew this could happen. I warned you before you left." "I know," she said, "but you can't fully understand the fear until you feel it, or how much you need to be held until it's over. I needed you so much, but you were far away," she said, resting her head on my chest. With a sigh, she continued. Leroy was a tall, attractive man from Chicago. He was a nurse. I met him on my first day in Katanga. Leroy had been there long enough to help newcomers like me. Of course, Leroy showed interest in me. Many of our co-workers were forming close friendships. It was partly romantic and partly because tomorrow was uncertain. But I held back. I was married and knew my husband wouldn't betray me. Why should I betray him just because I felt scared and lonely? Laura was a nurse from Atlanta who shared a tent with me. There were 12 countries represented among the medical staff, but I mostly stuck with the Americans. I grew close to Laura. One day, she and a team left to visit a site just 5 miles from our main facility. She never came back. It was 2 days before they found their burned vehicle. They recovered what was left of the men, but not of the women. Laura was simply gone, never to return. It could have been me. That night, I found comfort with Leroy for the next 5 months. The day Leroy left for home, I met Jared, a doctor from LA. We spent that last morning together. It felt important, but I knew it was only a short time. My time with Leroy and Jared was about that place and moment. We had no lives beyond the Democratic Republic of the Congo. "Please tell me you understand," she said at last. I understood. It hurt, but I understood what had happened. She lay beside me in bed. Though she was tall, she felt delicate. I loved her, but I also felt hurt. She had let me down in many ways, and now I felt foolish. "Say something," she urged. "What can I say? What will ever make things right again?" "Anna thinks we should go to counseling together. She believes we can fix things if we try. Will you come?" she asked. I got out of bed. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice urgent. "I will go to counseling, but I need some space from you right now," I said, stepping away from the room. She started to cry as I left. "The law school placement office said I should ask for $25 an hour," Rebecca Flynn said. She was the newest applicant for a summer intern position I had posted. She was the only one I considered. Rebecca was from this area but attended Cornell. She quickly mentioned she was on the law review and had been offered a summer job by a well-known firm in Manhattan. But her father had a heart attack, and she chose to stay with her family instead of going to the city. I liked that she valued family over career and that she came from a middle-class background. She needed her summer earnings to finish her last year of law school. 3 months had passed since I took on my role as special prosecutor. Tara had been doing the groundwork and finding the targets. Meanwhile, I had been wrapping up my existing cases, preparing for what was next. The school suggested the summer clerks ask for $25 an hour. I was doubtful about this. Only the big firms had the budget for that, and few firms were hiring. Most solo practitioners like me work long hours and make around $60,000 a year. Divided by 3,000 hours, that's about $20 an hour. Yet the second-year clerks were asking for more than what many owners made. "I'm offering $17, $50 an hour," I said. "Oh," she replied, sounding let down. "But I have a proposal for you. $25 for each hour you work on billable tasks and $15 for all other hours." She looked at me carefully, uncertain about my offer. She thought that every hour should be billable. Oh, the innocence of youth. But this plan was meant to help us both. I aimed to charge the state $125 an hour for her work, allowing me to earn $100 for every billable hour she recorded. This was the perk of working with a significant client. The challenge was having the governor involved, especially Miss Wilson. I was 3 months into my role as a special prosecutor, and she had been checking in on me since my first week. "The governor wants a progress update," Miss Wilson had texted. I had just begun, and she wanted results right away. "Sorry, but I will report at the end," I replied. The next day, she called me. "The governor requires monthly updates," she said. "Normally, we do 60 to 90 days, I responded. "Not if the governor wants monthly updates," Carrie Wilson said with a commanding tone. I realized that someone more experienced might have advised her on how to oversee my work. To get paid, my billing had to show regular tasks and clearly explain what I was doing. She could ask about each item in my billing and demand to know why it was necessary. In essence, she could monitor my activities through the billing. "Do you need monthly billing?" I asked. "Yes, I do. I mean, the governor does." I liked her. She was smart enough to be wary of me, and like me, she sensed something was off. By then, I had gone through all the documents in the large Commission on Correction file, and I was certain Miss Wilson had as well. It didn't seem to build a strong case against anyone. It was more of a political issue for the governor than anything serious. I looked into Carrie Wilson's background. She had attended Yale Law and Wellesley. Though she was a recent law graduate, she had not yet passed the bar exam. The governor was likely keeping her busy so she wouldn't have the time to study. She turned down a clerkship to work for the governor and was among those wanting to follow him to the White House. She came from a wealthy family in Westchester. Her father was a Wall Street executive, and her mother was part of New York high society. Carrie was well off with valuable connections. She wasn't really my type, and she seemed suspicious of me from the start, which I couldn't blame her for. "All right, I'll accept the offer," Rebecca said, pulling me back to the conversation. "Great. You start on Wednesday," I replied. We were 3 months into my tenure as a special prosecutor, and so far I had nothing to show for it, as Miss Wilson often reminded me. We had a lead. Tara's lawyer friend had given us a way to talk to the prison guards. Robert LeBach worked at Van Patten Correctional Facility. He was very normal except for one detail. Bob was getting divorced from his second wife. They each had 2 children, but none were together. Bob liked to save money. He kept every spare cent he could, and his wife wanted her part. The divorce was stuck because of money, and it had become quite a fight. Bob could explain everything he owned except for one large cash withdrawal of $5,000. He couldn't, or maybe didn't want to, tell us where it went. We got permission to see wiretap records, which would appear by the end of the month, but only the judge, Tara, and I knew this. My new law clerk would look through prison files while I concentrated on our main focus. Hopefully the suspects and Miss Wilson would be misled. My personal life was not moving forward like my case was. Simone and I were seeing a counselor named Anna Swenson twice a week. At first we focused on how Simone made mistakes and felt sorry for them. Anna was tough on my wife to show she was fair. Soon the sessions turned into long talks. Simone wanted forgiveness, and we were to rebuild our relationship. Unfortunately, I was stuck on the forgiving part. Anna finally asked, "Jim, it isn't just about the past issues, is it?" "No, I think the problem is bigger," I replied. "What is it?" Simone demanded to know. "You turned away from us, the girls and me. I worry it could happen again," I said. "How can you think that?" Simone asked. "Let's try to understand. Feelings are what they are," Anna advised Simone. That discussion was over 2 months ago, and we still struggled to connect. I was starting to believe that counseling wouldn't help. We were drifting apart. I was hurt, and Simone was angry, becoming more so each day. She thought I should forgive her, and we could just move on. I didn't see how that could solve anything. The pediatric benefit dance was the last Saturday in June. The new director of Memorial Hospital's Children's Services hosted the event. My wife, Simone Redmond, had used her maiden name again, which I learned from the invitations. The co-host was Dr. Eshe Faraji. I wore a rented tuxedo for the night. There was no missing where my formal wear came from, especially compared to my wife, who looked beautiful in her elegant black dress. She was the center of attention, even with the charming doctor beside her. Faraji was my wife's dance partner. The only person who didn't seem bothered by Faraji's attention was Claire, who was at the event with her husband. However, Deke seemed more like a temporary companion. Claire looked lovely, maybe a bit more daring than expected for a mother of 3. But who was I to say anything? My wife moved with confidence all night long. In contrast to the stylish crowd, I felt a bit out of place next to Faraji and Kuroso. Deke and I couldn't match their style, and it was clear that not many, including our wives, were focused on us. There was one exception. Anna Swenson came to talk to me. "How are you, Jimmy?" Anna asked. "Could be better," I answered. "My dad always said it's best to keep an open hand," she added. "I'll keep that in mind the next time I hold salt." "She cares about you, and he doesn't stand a chance," Anna told me. "That's true, but she is not exactly loyal, and we both know it." My first visit to the Van Patten Correctional Facility was long overdue, but I knew I wouldn't find the answers I was looking for there. Still, in early July, I decided to visit the prison and check in with the superintendent. The prison was just a series of housing units surrounded by a high fence topped with razor wire, creating a secure perimeter. An inner fence divided the facility into 4 sections. I was headed for the administration section, but I had to go through the main gate first. It was a boxy concrete structure, divided by metal detectors. 3 guards stood at the entrance, 2 men and a woman. They were initially unfriendly, but their demeanor grew even colder when I gave them my name. I went through the metal detector, was scanned with a wand, and searched. After about 20 minutes, I walked along a path to the administration building. The superintendent's office was just a short distance from the entrance. Her secretary met me at the door and led me inside. The superintendent's office was spacious but simply furnished. It contained basic government furniture. Superintendent Camilla Blake was a woman in her early 50s with graying dark hair. She wore a blue-gray suit that suited her role well. Her face looked both firm and approachable, and when she stood up from behind her desk to greet me, she led me to a seat at a small conference table. The room had a desk, a small love seat, and a couple of matching chairs. The table was small enough for about 8 people. While we sat across from each other, I thought her face looked familiar, though I couldn't remember ever meeting her. "I was pleased to hear about your appointment," she started. "We do know each other from a distance. My grandchildren go to school with your daughters." This made me remember where I had seen her before. Her daughter was a tall, blonde woman, and I recalled that her children were older than mine. "I thought I recognized you," I said. "Yes, your daughters are wonderful, and I admire your wife as well. My staff, especially the medical team, thinks highly of her. We use Memorial Hospital where she works for our medical needs. Your wife is impressive, and you must be very proud of her." "Yes, I am, and so are our daughters. We are a fortunate family," I replied. "I welcomed your role here. We are a family, and like your wife, we aim to help others. This is sometimes not fully appreciated but is important work. I see that you are a good person, and your kindness shows in how you treat others," she said. "Well, I appreciate your kind words, but I don't deserve all that praise. I try to do my job well, even if it means making tough choices," I said. "I see how much you care for your daughters. That's why I ask for fair and understanding treatment for my staff," she said. "I promise to be fair to your staff and everyone here. I respect Van Patten CF, as does my wife. She often talks about how committed your medical team is. People can be surprised by the level of care offered to the inmates. I understand that providing this care can be challenging, especially when women need specific services from outside providers," I said. "Yes, that is a keen observation. Our internal services are decent, but we rely on outside providers for specialized care," the superintendent agreed. "Memorial may not be the biggest hospital, but it helps meet our needs," I noted. I noticed the word adequate, aware that other hospitals in the area had more resources than Memorial. "Now about why I'm here. I've hired a young law student to help with the investigation. She'll be coming here to gather some information. She'll need a place to work and will review certain records, mainly staff assignments and inmate housing records. While I know you could hold strictly to the rules, I hope we can work together to make this happen quickly. You will have my full support in providing anything that isn't protected by law, and I'll help identify sealed records so you can get the necessary approvals, she replied, and I could see she was relieved that I was approaching this in such a straightforward way. I felt no guilt that she had misunderstood me or been misled about how I was working. While it looked like I was just handling paperwork, Tara was eavesdropping on her team's talks. Like any good prosecutor, I tried to learn about her staff and get them to share information among themselves. I had my own goals, and by the time the superintendent and Miss Wilson figured things out, I wanted to have the details I needed about someone. It was Simone's turn to pick up the girls, but she had texted me to say she took them to her mother's so we could have the night to ourselves. Something was bothering her. When I got home, I didn't see any happy decorations, just a woman who looked upset. "We need to talk," Simone said. "I thought we've been doing that in our talks with Anna," I replied. "We've been married for 10 years and together even longer. I know you, Jimmy. You're not open. You often keep things inside. It was never easy being your partner because I couldn't fully understand your feelings. But I always believed in your love, and you've been a wonderful husband and father," she said. "I didn't know you felt that way," I answered. "You're not really hearing me. I love you. You are a good man and husband. You have looked after me. But you don't let me in completely. Anna is starting to see that you're not being fully honest in our sessions. I know you aren't. If we want to fix our relationship, you need to be open with me." "What do you want me to say?" "Tell me what I can do to help us move on. I never wanted to hurt you. Let's just put it behind us." "You can start by telling me about Eshi Faraji," I said. "What does he have to do with us?" "He's interested in you, and you've been keeping him waiting. Why?" "Okay, he is good-looking and my type. A woman needs a man, and I do. My husband has been distant. So yes, maybe I've been keeping him in mind. I let him get a bit close, but I haven't done anything more. He doesn't stand a chance if my husband comes back to me," Simone said as tears started to fall. I knew her well. Soon she'd turn away to hide her sadness. It was partly real. Simone was caught between feeling sad and angry. She wanted to move past this so she could return to being a family without facing any results from her choices. I didn't worry about Dr. Faraji. Sure, he was attractive to my wife, but she wasn't the kind of woman who would easily fall for looks alone. I had seen how she interacted with men before when she wanted something. The real question was, what did Simone want from Faraji? She needed more than just charm. Simone sought a man who could offer her deeper feelings. She wanted and needed a strong, emotional bond. Her need for connection made her feelings complicated while she was in Africa. She was a strong woman, but she had her soft spots. I had lived long enough to see that women desire emotional bonds, and physical attraction is just a small part of it. "Will you promise not to do it again if we can rebuild our relationship?" I asked. "Of course," she answered quickly. "That means no more trips with Médecins Sans Frontières or any other charities," I told her. "What?" "You heard me. No more adventures away from home. You're my wife, not a hero saving the world." I could see the struggle inside her. Maybe for the first time she was facing a real choice. She had to decide between her family and her passion for helping others. It was a choice between us and her wish to make a difference. Simone might have come back home, but she didn't plan to stay for long. She would leave again, whether she said so or not. Simone didn't reply. She sat there for a moment thinking, then slowly got up and went toward the stairs. I gave her space and then followed her. When I got to our bedroom, the door was locked. I wasn't sure if that meant she was done thinking or if she still needed time. That night, I slept well on the couch in the living room. I had made my choice. Tara came to my office bright and early. The big smile on her face showed me she had some good news. I had one of those large striped bags hiding a microphone. One of my team and I pretended to be a couple at the Whitetail Inn, she said. We sat at a booth in the back where we could see the bar while we acted like we were having a conversation. "I got Bobby LeBach talking," she added, her excitement clear. She placed a recorder on my desk, turned it on, and cued it to the conversation. There was a lot of noise in the background, but LeBach started speaking softly, and his words came through clearly. "LeBach, you don't have a choice here. The DNA will reveal everything, even if she has a problem, and if she gives birth. It won't be hard to figure out which officer of African descent was with the pretty inmate." Second voice. "But the risk! I don't want to get in deeper than I already am. After all, she was begging, and I paid for the medication. You all said it was safe. Liebach, it was safe, but things can happen, and this is the way to handle it. You pay $5,000 for the doctor, and she goes to the doctor saying she has cramps after her period and some bleeding. The doctor will know what to do. Second voice. But what if it goes wrong? Liebach, nothing will go wrong, and if it does, she'll be in a hospital, for goodness sake. It continues like that with the other voice sounding worried for a while. But you understand what I mean, Tara said, turning off the recorder. Do we know who the officer is? I had someone follow him home. His name is Charles Washington from NYC. He lives alone in Latham. I'll find out more once we look into him, she said. Good. Keep a record of the video and prepare a request for a wiretap on Officer Washington, I instructed. You seem calm about all this. This is a big can of worms, right? No, actually, it's what we expected since Stan Katsaros pointed out this opportunity, I replied. I don't understand, Tara said. You will once you see who Mrs. Katsaros visits for her checkups, I said, sending Tara to finish her tasks. I knew Tara would look, but I didn't need her to. Sometimes 1 and 1 can be more than 2. I then called my new law clerk and asked her to find Officer Charles Washington's work history. I needed the name, age, and photo of every white female in any unit he worked in. Start from today and go backward. The sooner the better, I told the young law student, who looked a bit confused. Next, I requested a surveillance warrant for Officer Washington and called my friend Deke Hudson to invite him to lunch. The Route 9 diner is south of the city by the river. It's not too far from Route 32 and the highway interchange. Many passing diesel trucks stop there, making it a good lunch spot for mechanics. The diner looks unique, more like a large barn made from prefabricated sections. I was already in a booth sipping coffee when Deke arrived. I'm glad you called, Jim, he said as he took a seat across from me. The waitress came right over to take his drink order and tell him the specials. She smiled warmly at him. He was comfortable here. It's been too long, I said. I didn't mean to be hard on you last time. I know you and Claire were just trying to help. None taken. It's a tough situation. It takes some getting used to, he responded. How is Claire? Still at it with the long hours? I asked. He gave me a slightly suspicious look, but brushed it off. Well, it's good money. Don't get me wrong. The shop is doing well, but we rely on her job for health benefits and that steady paycheck. Running a small business these days costs a lot, but you probably know that, he explained. Yes, you're right. Between payroll taxes and health insurance, there isn't much left, I replied. Don't forget liability insurance and sales taxes, he added. Is that why you let Claire work with Eshe Faraji? I never thought you'd accept that, I said, sharing my concerns. Deke tensed, looking like I had caught him off guard. He recovered quickly and tried to deny it. I don't know what you mean, he said. Of course you do. Claire, my wife, has always said she was the best surgical nurse around here, so it makes sense that Dr. Faraji, the head surgeon, would want her in his operating room while Simone was away. But you might wonder who told me about Claire and him. It was Claire, with a little help from my wife. It wasn't just what they said, but how they said it. When I asked Claire about Dr. Faraji, she hesitated a little. Not much, but just enough. There was a time my wife came home very late after being out with Faraji, and I noticed her hesitation when I asked her about it. I confronted her about being with Faraji. I was surprised when she told me Claire set up the ride. I found out who owned the car he drove. Instead of bringing her home, he took her to his place, not far from mine. She spent the night away while you were home with the kids, I said. Deke paused for a moment and then sighed, understanding. You have to see it from my side. There's no way a guy like me can compete with a wealthy doctor. He has everything. Looks, money, and people say he is quite charming. All I have are bills and 3 boys to raise. So I ignored it. And, well, Claire. She makes it worth it. I'm taken care of, and Eshe won't be in the picture forever. I let her have her fun. So what? You should know he's interested in your wife next. The real question is, does fighting it help? No man wins in a divorce when there are kids involved. I could lose everything, just like you might, he finished. You may have a point, but this situation might take a turn, I said, just as the waitress brought our food. I had her box mine and left Deke to eat in peace. I didn't expect Lisa to come into my office on the afternoon I put pressure on Deke, but she did. I have the information on the fertility clinic, she started. Oh, good, I replied. There's no commitment right now. They just want to test your sperm as a potential donor. No problem, but I'm getting busy, so the sooner the better. Are you ready to become a mother? I asked, giving her a smile. I think so. I really want to try. But how does Simone feel about this? She will be fine, I said. I hope things are improving between you two. I know you care for each other a lot, and your girls really need both of you, Lisa said. You sound like there is a big issue, I replied. Lisa looked down at her hands before she answered. I've gotten to know you, Jim. You seem a bit different from your sister. You're not as open or forgiving. You don't need to be a lawyer to see that there are issues in your marriage. The cause would probably only surprise someone who doesn't know much about how things can be. When she finished speaking, she looked into my eyes. I had known for a while that my sister was a fortunate woman. Lisa was beautiful inside and out, and she was also very smart in a sincere way. She clearly saw the problem between Simone and me, and no one had to explain it to her. Don't worry. It will work out, I assured her. I hope so, for Vicky and Beth's sake. I love them like I hope to love my own children, and I would hate to see them hurt, she replied. I picked up the card she had given me for the clinic and tucked it into a corner of my desk. I'll call as soon as I can, I promised. Thank you, and please think about it. Consider what is best for your daughters before making any decisions, she urged. I understood that she was partly there to encourage me to resolve my issues with Simone for the sake of our daughters, whom she had come to care about. Pollyanna Randell, often called Anna Rand, was a young woman with brown hair and brown eyes. She stood 5'2" and was very charming. She looked young enough to be in junior high, although her record showed she was 19. My law clerk, Rebecca, had done a good job finding suitable candidates for Officer Washington's associate and narrowed it down to just 3. I set aside the other 2 because I thought they might be biased. I suspected that the seemingly innocent Polly held some secrets. She had past issues with the law, but it seemed she was more scared of certain people than the trouble she had gotten into. Do you understand your rights? I asked. We were sitting in a private room at the prison. Rebecca was with me as a witness, and I had a tape recorder to keep a record of our conversation. I had just finished explaining Pollyanna's rights, which was a required step. Do you think I need a lawyer? Polly asked. It's up to you, but since you're not at fault, I doubt it, I replied. When I said not at fault, her expression changed a bit. No one in custody can agree to a relationship with their caretakers, I clarified. Relationship? She asked, sounding confused. We will get along much better if we are open with each other, I said. I was just curious about what you meant, she said. I'm talking about Officer Washington and your situation, I said, raising my voice slightly. I could see that my words made her uneasy. Should I ask for a urine test? I inquired. She thought it over, then seemed to reconsider her stance. What's in this for me? She asked. You have 2 years left on your sentence. I think we can convince the governor to cut some time off, I replied. I'll be out in a year for good behavior anyway. You need to do more. I can give you more names, Pollyanna said. More? I asked, my mind racing with thoughts. Turn off the recorder and send the girl out, she said with a sly smile. I hesitated, unsure about being alone with her. I knew her sweet look hid something different. What's the matter, scared of little me? She teased. I looked at Rebecca. Do you have a watch? No, I just use my phone, but they take it when I come into the prison, Rebecca answered. Here, take mine, I said, giving her my wristwatch. It was a nice watch, a gift from my wife when she was in medical school. Simone had worked extra shifts to buy me that watch. I valued that old-fashioned way to keep time. Take the watch and leave for exactly 2 minutes, I instructed Rebecca. Once the door closed behind her, Pollyanna got right to the point. A big-time lawyer like you must know someone who can help me find a good home for my baby, she said, placing a hand on her belly. I wasn't taken in by her sudden worry for a child she wanted to put up for adoption. What type of help do you need? Private adoption help with the right couple. A wealthy couple? Preferably, she replied. A mixed-race baby might not be very sought after, I said. She laughed. Charlie Washington thinks too highly of himself. I have several better options. He was just the easiest to blame, she said. All right, you get out early and I'll find a lawyer for a private adoption, I said. Good. I'll talk when I meet the lawyer, she replied. The agreement was made. I arranged for Pollyanna Randell to be in protective custody until everything was set. The next step was to get Officer Washington to talk, then Labak. It didn't take long. As soon as Officer Washington saw Pollyanna's statement, he realized his colleagues were using him. Labak fell apart as soon as Washington turned against him. Labak had the information I really needed, but I knew his word alone wouldn't be enough to bring down the real target. I needed a credible witness. I noticed Superintendent Blake's displeasure. We were in her office. She sat behind her desk while I stood. I believe the subpoena is clear, I stated. But you are asking for medical records? She questioned. Yes, and the order was signed by Judge Clement of the state court after I provided him with releases from every patient. My clerk, Rebecca, had spent 2 weeks gathering those releases from current and former inmates. The names came from Labak. Rebecca made promises to help with the releases, and the governor and I would work to fulfill them. Some people got shorter sentences, while others were added to the list for pardons. But I had the releases and the judge's order. Superintendent Blake understood where this was headed. By then she must have heard that Officers Labak and Washington were telling on their colleagues. Camilla Blake sighed, shook her head, and reached for her office phone. 40 minutes later, her staff placed the files on her conference table, and I instructed them to make copies. I would take the originals and leave the copies behind. I observed everything closely, even though I knew what would be there. The superintendent and her team worked in silence. I had brought Tara and 2 staff members to help secure the records. I did not want any mistakes now. We managed to carry 6 boxes of documents to Tara's truck. Everything depended on what we would do next. I noticed that my sister still had doubts. Do you not trust your brother? I asked her. She was driving so I could see her face as she focused on the road. A lot rests on someone giving you their testimony, Tara replied. But we know how it worked, and that will help. We know the doctor sent the women for treatment. The same doctor admitted each patient, and the same nurse was assigned and signed each record. Yes, but without the nurse, all you have is the word of those who have been through a lot, saying they were pregnant, and that the doctor changed that. These records tell a different story. You think a jury would not believe the doctors? I'm counting on the nurse, I said. Do you understand your rights? I asked Claire Hudson. Jimmy, why are you doing this to me? Claire demanded. I had her brought in by the county sheriff while she was on her way to work. I put my wife's best friend in an interview room for a while. I knew she was scared by then and hopefully ready to talk. You've done things wrong, I said. What? You can't believe that. You helped with illegal procedures and changed records. Why would you say that? I have the documents with your signature everywhere. Your name is on all the surgical records. So that's just normal procedure, and these processes are legal here, not when done without consent. No one was forced. The women were in custody and couldn't consent freely. If you didn't realize it was wrong, why were you hiding it? I'm just the nurse. I follow orders. A senior nurse whose involvement was crucial. You should remember I know the rules of your hospital. They needed your help with the procedures and your signature to confirm what they had done. I know that what you claimed they did and what actually happened were not the same. You covered for Caruso and Faraji, but mostly for Faraji. You can prove any of that? She asked, but it didn't sound like she believed it. I showed her the statements I had gathered from the officers and witnesses. That was all I needed. She broke down and started crying. As for your link to Faraji, Declan admitted that to me. No, you don't understand. We weren't really hurting anyone. Deke cares about me. He got it. The women needed help. Read the statements. They were paid to hide what was really happening. Claire put her head down on the table and just cried. I had Tara waiting to come in as the nice one. I handed Claire over to her, and she took the statement that pointed to Caruso and Faraji. Their plan must have seemed perfect. Who would question a doctor treating a patient? The women went for a checkup, saying they had a health problem, which led the authorities to send them to the gynecologist. That doctor was Caruso. If he decided that surgery was needed, no one would question him. Faraji did the surgery with help from his nurse, Claire Hudson. Caruso and Faraji were making money from a single operation through the state and getting extra payments on the side. At first, this seemed small, but it quickly grew into something larger as Claire talked. They offered more than just regular procedures. They also addressed other health issues, provided birth control, and hid evidence of serious misconduct. I had been too trusting to think this was the whole problem, but life teaches important lessons. I got home late, weighed down with the work of building a case for the grand jury. It's not as easy as it looks on TV. Preparing a case requires a lot of work. The first challenge is putting everything together since smaller counties don't have a grand jury all the time. However, Stan Katsaros managed to have one already set up, as if he knew I would need it. Simone and the girls were already having dinner when I walked in. Simone made soup and bought fresh bread. I joined them, listening to my daughters share their day while a noticeable silence filled the space where my wife sat. By then, she probably knew about Claire's situation, but she chose not to bring it up in front of the children. After dinner, Simone put the girls to bed and unusually read them stories. I went to the small office downstairs, mainly Simone's space, where I tried to organize my plans for the next few weeks. There was a lot to get ready. My thoughts wandered to how Carrie Wilson would react when she saw my recent notes. She had been eager for action, and now it was just around the corner. "Why would you do something so hurtful?" Simone asked from the doorway. "Just doing my job," I replied without looking up. "Your job?" "Claire and Deke are our friends, and she was just doing her job as a nurse." "She was helping out a coworker and taking part in something wrong," I replied. "Really?" "She's our friend, just helping with regular medical tasks." "I can't discuss it any further." "Is this payback?" she insisted. "No, not from my side. I am working to hold those accountable who are taking advantage of people in prison, and that's where my focus is." "By arresting my friends?" "Yes, because they are part of illegal actions. That's just your opinion. And the grand juries, hopefully." With that, the conversation ended, and she left the room clearly upset. For the next 2 weeks, we didn't talk. I hardly noticed as I was busy preparing for my upcoming case. The night before I was to present my evidence, I had spent the day getting everything ready. After returning home late, I thanked Lisa, who had kindly looked after my daughters. "Thanks," I said to Lisa after checking that the girls were asleep. She was in my living room, watching the end of an emotional movie on TV, tears on her cheeks. As she turned to me, she wiped them away with her hand. "I'm not usually this emotional," she said. "It's the medication. I have an appointment coming up, and I might need your help if you're still okay with it." "It would be an honor, and I'll hope for the best for you," I said, offering her my support. "I hope this does not make things harder for you and Simone," she said, grabbing her coat and heading for the door. "No, my issues have nothing to do with you." "I'm really sorry to hear that. You both seem so happy together. I hope you can work things out. Good people should be able to forgive each other," she said. I saw her out, thinking about what she had said. The situation was affecting both the hospital and Simone's friends. I was part of that situation. It would hurt my wife, but I did not feel I had anything to ask forgiveness for. I wanted to right the wrongs that had been done. That was my job, and it was what I was expected to do. Yet deep down, I sensed that there was something about this case that went beyond just right and wrong. Tomorrow, with some luck, I would try to convince the grand jury to take action against 2 doctors, a nurse, and several correction officers. More might follow, but starting with this would create quite a stir in the local news and hopefully please the governor and others involved. My wife didn't come home until near midnight. She looked tired. I was already in bed, reading because I couldn't sleep. She took a shower and then climbed into bed, leaning over to turn off the light. I thought it meant she wanted to go to sleep, but I was wrong. She moved closer to me, and we had a brief moment together. After that, she turned to her side of the bed and soon fell asleep. Thomas Everett Parker, Jr. was a tall, respected man in his 50s. He was the best defense lawyer around. Parker was known for his great successes in court and his smooth voice. He was the son of Thomas Everett Parker, Sr., a well-known figure in the area until he passed away. The younger Parker was representing Dr. Caruso. In just 2 days, I managed to get the grand jury to approve every charge I asked for. This led to a call from Tom Parker, requesting a meeting. The successful lawyer and his well-dressed client took seats in my small meeting room, and I thought we were going to discuss a deal. Parker started to talk about my case and pointed out what he thought were the good qualities of the doctor. He saw Kuroso as a caring professional who supported people's choices. When Parker paused, the doctor spoke convincingly, trying to gain sympathy. It was clear that both the lawyer and the doctor had impressed my assistant, Rebecca, who was in the room. "Sorry," I interrupted. "I have charges for 3 serious offenses, and I don't see a reason to drop them." I didn't want to mention that Kuroso had made some poor choices that led to these issues. It felt unkind and might have shown my knowledge of the hidden problems. Kuroso looked at Parker, who raised his eyebrows and shrugged, as if to say, "I warned you." The doctor nodded at Parker, and the lawyer began to speak softly. "My client has something to offer," he said. "Offer?" "He can give you information about someone important," Parker replied. I started to think of the prison superintendent, but I was wrong. "I can tell you about Commissioner Abruzzo," the doctor said. I tried to hide my surprise and excitement. I turned to Parker and asked, "Is this serious? How credible is it?" The lawyer explained the information in a vague but convincing way. It seemed that Kuroso had been paid to oversee the health of inmates at the Van Patten Correctional Facility. His salary was $100,000 a year for just a few days of work each month, with an extra $20,000 annually. It was also understood that he would make sure no unknown children would be born. My case had just taken a big turn, and everything started to make sense. The missing piece I had sensed all along had finally appeared, bringing clarity to the situation. Parker looked as if he could read my mind, and I wondered how much he truly knew. The agreement we reached meant Kuroso would not go to prison, although he would admit to a serious crime. The doctor would lose his license but could get it back after 3 years of following the rules. He left my office looking happy, while I stayed behind, surprised and a bit embarrassed by my own trust. Rebecca thought differently. "Wow, I thought this summer would be boring," she said. "I've learned so much more than I ever did in school." "Well, don't get too happy. We have a lot more work ahead." I laid out the new plan. I called Tara to tell her about the update in our investigation. Then I went home. I needed to rest and think clearly after everything that had just happened. Simone's car was in the driveway, which meant she was home during the day. There was no other car. Even with our issues, I expected to find her calmly busy. Instead, I found my wife packing. "Were you going to tell me you were leaving?" I asked. She jumped a little when she saw me, not expecting me at that hour, but kept packing her car. "Yes, of course," she said. "I was going to tell Vicky Beth and you tonight. Can I ask why?" "There's a new outbreak in Nigeria. I got a call at work. They need help." "Okay, new question. Why you?" "Don't be like that. I have to go. If I don't, who will help?" "Maybe someone who doesn't have a family to worry about." She laughed softly and turned to look at me. "We both know the girls will be fine with you, and you don't really want me around." "My daughters need their mother," I said. "No, they have a super dad. He's clever in the world, but he's everything they need at home. The truth is, their mom doesn't fit here anymore, so this will be best for everyone. Maybe when I come home next time we can rebuild." "So that's it? You're leaving?" "Yes, but I have a favor to ask. I want to take Claire with me. Can you help her go with me?" "I think that can be arranged. It might take a few weeks." "Thank you." Angie's is one of many places to eat and drink on Western Ave near the state office and the university. Mike Tillman, the head of the Commission on Corrections, sat in a booth at the back. It was past lunch for most state workers, so the place was quiet. When I asked to meet, Mike invited me to lunch. He chose the time and the place. It was a relaxed setting where state workers often came, helping to keep the idea alive that we weren't really working together in secret. At this point, a formal meeting might send the wrong message. Some might think what happened was planned, but no one would say that without strong proof. "The chicken parm sandwich is good, but you should get the onion rings instead of the fries," Mike said as I sat down. The waitress, who looked uninterested, came over as I took my seat, and I ordered what Mike suggested. "With coffee," I added, giving the menu back. "So what did you want to discuss?" Mike asked as soon as the waitress walked away. "Well, I really just have one question," I said, trying to look him in the eye. Mike smiled at my effort to steer the conversation. Just one question? Yes, I get it. I played a part in all this. Not just a pawn, at least a knight. Maybe not a shining knight, but a knight nonetheless. That's a way to say I've been used, I replied. Now I'm curious. How do you feel you've been used? Mike asked, grinning as if he already knew the answer. Stan Katsaros is much older than his wife. That can make a man uneasy, especially when he's not very good-looking, and he's a short Greek lawyer married to a beautiful woman. But as the district attorney, if he thinks his wife is being unfaithful, he has many resources to keep an eye on things, I explained, watching Mike closely. He nodded for me to keep going. When Stan discovers his wife is involved with her doctor, he's upset. But then he finds out the doctor is doing some wrong things with inmates. Now he has a big problem. He knows misconduct is happening in his area, but he found out in a risky way. He's caught. If he takes action, he could get into trouble for misusing his position, not to mention how it could affect his personal life. But what if it comes out that he knew and did nothing? That's a tricky situation, Mike said. Yes, it is, but the solution is even more intriguing. Stan has a contact who can investigate without needing any good reason. It's an agency designed for that very thing. So naturally, Stan takes his findings there. Problem solved, Mike said. But, I replied. But what? Mike asked. Well, the person he spoke to had his own reasons. A bit of revenge for being ignored. And this person knew more than Stan did. Like what? Mike prodded. How the doctor got his job and how the system really works, I said. I'm still waiting for your question, he commented. Why me? You could have picked anyone. Why involve a defense attorney who isn't known for a good reputation to deal with issues in the Department of Corrections? Mike beamed at me and replied, Jimmy, you still don't see it. Like I said, a knight. The kind of person who will step up when others won't, but fight wisely when needed. A man had a beautiful wife who caught the eye of many others. He was a clever lawyer who just needed a little guidance. He paused when the waitress brought the food. Once she left, he continued. In this story, the good guys come out on top. Stan gets his wife back and finds some justice. The governor can make changes in the biggest state agency and choose his own team. And you get a nice paycheck, too. I suppose if you had worked a bit slower, you might have earned more. But I'm sure no one will mind if you take your time towards the end. And what do you get, Mike? He smiled. The pleasure of seeing those who hurt me face the consequences, plus the appreciation from the public and the governor. What happens when Abruzzo's friends stop hiding? I asked. By then I will have moved on, and as you said, you're just a small-time defense lawyer. We should be safe. I wasn't sure about that last part. Politicians remember things easily, and we had changed a lot in the system. But the food was great, and I enjoyed Mike's company despite his quirks. After lunch, I went back to the office, knowing I had been used but understanding why. Epilogue. I was at the bar in the Gideon Hotel ballroom. It was the yearly meeting of the Defenders Bar Association. It was clear that my short time as a special prosecutor had not made me popular with other lawyers. They were avoiding me. Care to buy a drink for a lady? A woman's voice asked. I turned to see Carrie Wilson next to me. I didn't expect to see any women here. I thought it was all lawyers. Is that your idea of a joke? She replied. Well, we try to keep things light when we can. Poor Jimmy pushed away all his friends by sending people to jail. That's not quite true. Abruzzo got probation, and I had to make deals with Dr. Caruso, Claire Hudson, and most of the officers, I explained. Looks like the only person you caught was Dr. Faraji, who's the least responsible of them all, she said. Can I get a drink now? She sipped her gin and tonic and guided me to an empty table. The governor thinks we should let Faraji go, she said. Why is that? He's not that responsible, and it feels unfair to punish him for something that isn't related to his actions. She raised her eyebrows. I knew what others were whispering. My wife had gone to Africa during the scandal, and people said Dr. Faraji was interested in her. Some even claimed they were close. It didn't matter if the rumors were true. Just the suspicion was enough. And that would be? I heard your wife is back in Africa. Yes, she's been gone for about 3 months. That must be tough for your marriage. I couldn't help but laugh. You know it is true, as we are now legally separated. Then make a deal with Faraji and put an end to this mess. Come have dinner with me, she suggested. Dinner? I questioned. Carrie Wilson was giving me a chance. If I let Faraji go, the governor would get what he wanted. The leaders would not mind that I wasn't punished. Yes, dinner. Special prosecutors do eat, right? I might not be the best person to join a governor's assistant. You will be fine. You act like you are better than Ivy League graduates, but you are not bad looking. Besides, I'm curious to know who the father of your sister's wife's baby is, she said with a warm smile. Lisa was expecting a child. Tara had shown me the ultrasound and said it was a boy. The newly married couple was overjoyed, but there were many rumors about the identity of the father. How can I be sure I can trust you with such sensitive news? I asked. She chuckled and replied, because I'm not just any person. I'm a lawyer. Then she took my hand and led me into the chilly December night. The small black shape rested on the hard green cot. It was not the bed you would want for a sick child, but the little girl, known as Beth, was very ill. She was losing blood because of the Ebola virus. Sitting beside her was Dr. Simone O'Reilly, wearing special protective gear. The thick blue gloves covered her hands, and gray goggles shielded her eyes. Inside her suit, Simone felt empty and sad. In this room filled with white coverings, she sat with Beth, waiting for the end. Dante had talked about the circles of hell, but he missed this one filled with pain, disease, hunger, and sadness. Simone and her co-workers walked through this dark place, separated by thin plastic, yet connected by their shared humanity. I have a little girl named Beth, too, Simone said to the still figure beside her. As she spoke, Beth drifted further away from life. They could only connect through the gloves. The suit felt hot and uncomfortable, but it was said to be better than the old one. Simone felt the weight of her past mistakes and accepted her sadness, but she could not accept the suffering of her patients. Her friend Claire Hudson appeared less upset, more at peace with the reality around them. Claire was a nurse while Simone was the doctor. Doctors are expected to save lives, but this illness continued on its own harsh path. All they could do was try to control it and hope for it to ease. Claire had come to terms with this, but Simone struggled. The doctor felt the pain of each loss. Beth left this world, and Simone moved to the next room and then the next. In the early morning light of the small hut she shared with Ben, Simone awoke from another disturbing dream. In the dream, she was with her family on a boat, and they had gone swimming. As her daughters climbed back on, the boat began to move. Her husband Jimmy was at the wheel. She called to him, saying she was still in the water, but he did not seem to hear. The boat continued to drift away as she swam after it. Just as it vanished from view, she woke up. The hut was filled with the soft light of dawn. Ben lay beside her, his arm resting comfortably on her shoulder as they welcomed the new day together. They had shared a close moment the night before, finding comfort and connection in a challenging time. Ben Robinson had a fiancé in Atlanta. He was a registered nurse with a PhD in public health, dedicated to helping fight a significant threat to human health. Simone had taken the young man under her wing, helping him deal with the challenges they faced together. In return, he offered her support during tough times. They relied on each other when the emotional strain became heavy, especially for Simone after she lost a little girl named Beth. Ben had been a strong presence for her, just as she had been for him. Ben often wrote long emails to his fiancée back home. When the satellite link worked, he would video call her. His fiancée, Amani, was originally from Goa, India, and then adopted by an American family. She sent him encouraging letters, reminding him that his birthday was coming up and asking him to make it special. Ben and Amani understood each other well. He was focused on helping others, while she stayed back to plan for their future together. Unlike Simone, they did not feel any guilt about their relationship. Simone, however, was troubled by thoughts of her husband, Jimmy. She loved him deeply and needed to know he was waiting for her at home, but he had not contacted her. Although he sent letters through their daughters and updates from her sister, in-law said everything was fine. There were unsettling rumors from friends about Jimmy possibly being with someone else, which Simone couldn't ignore. Jimmy was complicated, keeping his feelings hidden, making it hard for her to know what he was really thinking. As morning came, Simone guessed her family in New York was still asleep. Meanwhile, Jimmy O'Reilly was awake. After a long day, he had returned from New York City, where he was working on the case of Samuel Gill. The appeal from New Jersey had gone to the Federal Circuit Court in Manhattan. As a lawyer, Jimmy was representing the side appealing the case. The situation was unusual. 15 years earlier, Mary Slatterly had been found dead in her apartment in Trenton, New Jersey. At that time, the police had many suspects in the death of the 27-year-old teacher. Mary had socialized with different people, catching the interest of several men, including Samuel Gill. Although he had an alibi from his friends, its reliability was questionable. Years later, new techniques in forensic science allowed old DNA evidence from the carpet under Mary's body to be retested, prompting police to revisit their list of suspects. When asked, Samuel Gill agreed to provide a cheek swab, but he was hesitant about traveling from Saratoga, where he now lived, to Trenton for the test. He suggested a local lab instead, but the Trenton police insisted on collecting the sample themselves. Gill declined to travel to New Jersey, saying he had work commitments as a carpenter. "There's no union work here. If you don't show up, they will find someone else," Gill told the detective. The Trenton police said they would check in with Gill later. Instead, they tried to catch him at his home in Clifton Park on a Friday night after work. The two detectives waited all night for Gill to come home. On Saturday morning, they contacted the New York State Police, who reached out to Gill's job. A tired construction foreman said that Gill was out of state, but didn't share where he was. Thinking Gill was trying to avoid them, the state police issued a detainment order without proper legal steps. These details did not concern the New Jersey State Police. On Sunday night, after spending the weekend with his girlfriend in Massachusetts, Gill was stopped and arrested by the state police, although nobody explained why he was arrested. Attorney O'Reilly got the call about Gill's situation and rushed to help him, having helped Gill with a small charge before. Even with an unpaid bill, O'Reilly's presence and the lack of a warrant or proper charges allowed Gill to be released that Sunday night. Gill shared his frustration about being forced to take a DNA test by Trenton. A subpoena and a federal judge's ruling against it meant O'Reilly had to navigate questions in the circuit court. New Jersey insisted on getting a sample, while Gill fought back to protect his rights. The panel of 3 judges debated what counted as an unreasonable search under the Fourth Amendment, while Jimmy O'Reilly was ready to argue about the Fifth Amendment. He answered many questions from the engaged judges. New Jersey went first, asking a few questions. Each side had 8 minutes with a light system green first, then yellow in the last 90 seconds. When the red light came on, they had to stop. But judges could ask questions for as long as they wanted. The main judge, a woman, was very interested in the Fourth Amendment. Jimmy answered her questions and made his case. After all, Gill was paying, and the time still counted, racking up costs regardless of the light. "To sum up your argument, Mr. O'Reilly," the female judge said, "New Jersey's request is unreasonable given the situation." "Yes, Your Honor." "If I may, my name is Eric Schwartz, and I represent the New York Attorney General who has submitted a brief," said a young assistant from New York. New York was supporting New Jersey, but Eric was facing even more challenges than his colleague from New Jersey. His struggle was with Judge Blaine, a district court judge from Western New York sitting on the panel. "Schwartz, does New York really think asking for a person's DNA 15 years later is reasonable?" Judge Blaine asked. "Well, the Attorney General thinks it's not too much to ask. It's just a cheek swab," Schwartz replied. "Just a cheek swab? This man was arrested and held without charge just to get his DNA," Blaine said. The judges were very attentive, and they had read all the details. They asked a lot of questions, but it seemed they were leaning towards a decision in O'Reilly's favor. 2 hours later, Jimmy sat with 2 cans of beer in the cafe car of the Amtrak train, heading north. He had bought 2 beers at once to save himself a trip in line later on. The ride was supposed to take 2 hours and 40 minutes to Rensselaer, Albany. That was enough time for 2 beers and to total his expenses for the day. He figured he spent a little over $2,200, not including the taxi tip in New York or the parking fees for his car at the train station in Rensselaer. Not bad for a day's work. Eric Schwartz came over and sat across from Jimmy, acting friendly just because they had both been in federal court. "I told them we wouldn't get anywhere," he said. Jimmy grunted in response as he reviewed his numbers. I didn't see the point. They will probably just collect the DNA anyway, Eric added. This caught Jimmy's interest, even though he still didn't show much expression. Jimmy said, taking a sip of his beer. Do you think the train will be on time, or should I count on an extra half hour? They usually run about 20 minutes late going north. Eric thought for a bit. I wonder why that is. Maybe the client is worried about the bill. He was already upset about what happened, Jimmy replied after thinking for a moment. Yeah, it's a real waste of time when they have to gather the evidence anyway. Evidence could come from almost anything, really. Eric, the assistant AG, was just pointing out what the police would do if the court didn't agree. They would put in the extra effort and still pursue it. Jimmy imagined how his client would feel hearing that news. Here's a big bill, and by the way, they already have the evidence. Jimmy realized he needed to do something. But what? Simone had been called to meet Alice Johnson, the chief administrator. It wasn't unusual for her to have meetings, but it felt strange not to know the reason for this one. Please have a seat, Alice said. Once seated, Simone looked at Alice, a woman in her 50s. Alice sat behind her desk in a way that made it feel like they were in a hospital back home, not in a small building at the foot of a hill in West Africa. I wanted to personally let you know that I'm sending you home for a break. But why? I need to be here for my work, Simone said. Yes, but your thoughts aren't clear. The Dr. O'Reilly I met 2 years ago was strong and committed, Alice said. But the Simone O'Reilly in front of me seems troubled. Your friend Claire shared some personal struggles you are dealing with. I see your situation. Many people face similar challenges, but it's hard to do this job without sorting them out. Trying to work here while feeling this way is tough, even for the strongest person. You need to take time to sort out your family issues. I won't allow anyone to overwork themselves while I'm in charge. But you need me. The kids need me, and this fight is important. If we fail here, many could be harmed. That's why I'm sending you home. This is a serious fight, one that may not be resolved soon. The world doesn't fully see it yet, but if we fail, the results could be terrible. I need my team at their best. Go home, fix your personal issues, and then come back. I want Simone O'Reilly back, but only when she's feeling her best. With that, Alice let Simone go, and both women knew it was the right choice. Simone needed to find peace within herself and face the problems she had been avoiding. The first Ebola case in the United States was found in Dallas, Texas. It turned into a few cases among healthcare workers. Soon, random cases began showing up among travelers returning from West Africa. Many people were scared, and politicians reacted, some bravely and others nervously. Dr. Simone O'Reilly, a respected pediatric surgeon, found herself in quarantine when she arrived at Newark International Airport. She had to reach out to the one person she didn't want to ask for help. Jimmy O'Reilly received a call just after 9 p.m. while he was putting his daughters to bed. A representative of Doctors Without Borders told him that Simone had been held after returning from West Africa. Though he knew Simone was coming back, he didn't know the exact details. Their relationship had become strained, and communication was difficult. By the time of the next call from Simone, he was already taking action. After the first call, he decided to reach out to Carrie Wilson for support. Calling her felt strange since they were involved, and he had been dating Carrie for almost 4 months. She had been clear about her expectations and what she wanted. Carrie and Simone shared a lot in common. Both were ambitious women focused on their careers, not swayed by everyday life. Carrie had a fiancé, Raymond Emerson, who worked in local government. Their wedding date was not set, as they aimed to move from being a well-known couple in Albany to making a name for themselves in Washington. Carrie described her relationship with Raymond as open. This made Jimmy unsure about what it all meant. He knew his time with Carrie was meant to be casual, but it felt more meaningful. Carrie seemed to enjoy spending time with him, perhaps as a break from her busy life in politics. However, she rarely mentioned Raymond. Since Carrie had connections with the governor, Jimmy decided to ask her for help in getting Simone released. He pushed aside his mixed feelings and made the call. Carrie was happy to help. This went against her strong belief that healthcare workers should not be held against their will. She felt good about assisting Simone, who was connected to the man she was seeing. More importantly, Carrie liked that Jimmy was depending on her for support. That night, Simone called briefly. It was clear she was struggling and needed Jimmy to help her. He had never seen her so upset, not even years ago when she was in a risky situation that brought them together. Now, she was asking him to bring her home, and it was clear she was scared. 20 minutes after he finished speaking to Simone, Carrie called him back. She was acting in her role as the governor's assistant, giving a list of tasks to another employee. The firm is Simcoe, Bryce, and Taylor. The attorney is Ted Bryce. He will be at the federal courthouse in Newark at 8:30 tomorrow morning. The governor will reach out to the judge tonight to ask him to address this right away. You need to go to Newark tonight to get the necessary papers signed. I'm sending them to your office now. One for Simone and one from the doctor who will meet you in the first-class lounge of U.S. Air, Carrie instructed. Then she added, just try not to lose your cool. Thanks, Carrie. You owe the governor a favor, Jimmy. He won't forget, and I won't either. He left his daughters with his sister and her wife, then drove south on the highway toward New Jersey. The airport parking lots were full, and the terminal was busy with security checks. To say it was crowded would be an understatement. He struggled to get into the first-class lounge for U.S. Air since he didn't have a ticket. The attendant finally understood he was a lawyer there to meet a passenger. When they checked the computer, they found that a doctor, Carl Jennings from the CDC, was flying in from Atlanta, but his flight was delayed. After agreeing to be called on his cell when the doctor arrived, Jimmy went to find where Simone was being held. It took time and some discussions to reach the area now called a quarantine site. It was just an office with a window to talk through. No one seemed to know what to do or what would happen next. Jimmy told Simone through the glass that he would have her out the next morning. Then some airport security tried to make him leave the airport. Luckily, a group of lawyers from the ACLU arrived, and during the talk, Jimmy slipped away to find out where his epidemiologist was. As he went back to the first-class lounge, the staff called to say that Dr. Jennings had arrived and was waiting for him. It was after 2 a.m., and the airport was starting to quiet down. In the lounge, Dr. Jennings greeted Jimmy and invited him to sit while he reviewed the affidavit. Yes, this is what Miss Wilson and I discussed, Jennings said. She is a very capable woman. She chose this place so they could have a notary available. Carrie does think of everything, but tell me how she got you here. Oh, I was already on my way because of the whole quarantine situation. It's a difficult matter. I was coming to see if I could help those in charge. I'm glad I can assist your wife. Without dedicated people like her, we would have serious concerns about the spread of Ebola. But if, and I do mean if they can control this disease in West Africa, then the world will owe them a great deal. The next morning went very well. The federal judge released Simone by 9 a.m., and then signed an order to consider why the rest of the detainees shouldn't be set free. Just as they were present before the judge, a New Jersey attorney named Ted Bryce was arguing, when the governor of New York made a statement against the detention of returning healthcare workers without reason. By noon, Jimmy had Simone on the New York Thruway heading home. She hadn't said a word since getting into their old but reliable Honda. All Jimmy could get from her were short sounds and nods of her head. At the Kingston exit, he decided they needed a break. He took the exit, went through the traffic circle, and stopped for lunch at a nearby diner. After parking and turning off the engine, he said, "We're just over an hour from home, but you don't seem ready to see our daughters. What's bothering you?" He had known his wife for more than 10 years, but what happened next caught him off guard. The strong woman he thought he knew began to cry. It was more than just tears. He could feel a pain in her he had never seen before. He took her in his arms and comforted her softly. "It's okay. You're safe now," he said, gently stroking her hair while she rested against him. "Nothing can harm you here. I promise." How could they do that? Lock me in like an animal. You're free now. They were just scared. Not everyone can be brave when they face something they don't understand. She cried and shook for almost an hour. He went into the diner by himself to get takeout. They ate in the car as he tried to comfort her. She was hungry, tired, and emotionally drained. Despite the difficulties they faced, he realized he loved his wife and always would. Whether their marriage could be fixed was another question he chose to ignore for now. Simone took a week to recover. She spent time with her daughters, Vicky and Beth. They had missed her, but seemed to manage well. The girls were excited about their cousin's upcoming arrival. Lisa, their Aunt Tara's partner, was 8 months pregnant, and the baby could come as soon as 2 weeks. No one had told the girls that their father was the donor, making the new baby their half-sibling. Lisa says they are going to name him James, Beth told her mother. But Daddy doesn't want them to, Vicky added. He doesn't like the name James. Did you know that? Yes, we talked about it when we thought you might be a boy, Simone replied. Beth found the idea of Vicky being a boy very funny. Tara showed up and encouraged the girls to play outside. Get some sun while you can. Fall is here and winter will be soon. Once the girls were gone, Simone said, I assume you sent them out so we could talk. Yes, Tara answered. Lisa thinks Jimmy might be open to discussing things about you and him. He's changed a bit since you last left. I believe you mean Carrie Wilson, but I hardly see how taking a partner helps him grow up. Don't be harsh. My brother tends to like strong women. Like you, she respects a smart man who accepts a smart woman as a partner. But she doesn't claim their relationship is exclusive, and he has accepted that. He's let go of some of his unrealistic ideas about love. Is that how you view our marriage? It's how I see it now. You have a role in this world, and so does he. It's not fair to chase after an ideal given your lives. If you love something, set it free. If it returns, it's yours. If not, it was never meant to be. My, haven't you become wise? Of course I found someone special. I have the chance to be with the one I love every day. You and Jimmy will only share moments between your busy lives. He needs to accept that. At that moment, Jimmy was waiting at the Latham Inn for Carrie Wilson. The inn was a place where people preferred to blend in. Carrie was open about her relationships but never showed them off. She would say, people are fine with a lot as long as you don't push it in their faces. Jimmy had a tough exterior, like a defense attorney. He didn't care what others thought. His opinion was what mattered. He had not made his situation a big deal, nor had he hidden it. He knew what his wife was doing while she was away, and he had done the same. Now that she was back, he felt uncertain about his relationships with his wife, Simone, and his friend Carrie. Carrie had called him to meet at the quiet inn. When she arrived, she was all smiles. You look happy, he said. For you, my dear, she replied. Haven't you heard? You won your case. That made Jimmy smile. He had been hopeful about the outcome, but knowing for sure was a relief. Carrie laughed as he grinned. Since the inn didn't have table service at that hour, Jimmy went to the bar for Carrie's drink. On his way back, a tall, elegant woman entered with a big man. They both greeted Carrie before looking away. Noticing Jimmy's curiosity, Carrie leaned in and whispered, Susan Singleton and Tony Greco. He's the governor's main advisor, and she might become head of PR for his next campaign. Jimmy looked at Susan for a moment. He had never met the wife of Stephen Fitzgerald, known as Foxy, but she looked just as impressive as people said. She's married, I hear, Carrie added. Yes, I know her husband. He's defending Roger Hamilton, Jimmy replied. The Hamilton accused of troubling his pregnant wife? That's him, but it's still just an allegation. From what I've heard, the trial is a formality, Carrie said. You never know, especially with Foxy in the mix, Jimmy pointed out. He respected Stephen Fitzgerald for taking bold steps to win cases. This thought reminded Jimmy that he needed to consider how to handle the police wanting to collect DNA from his client. There must be a way to redirect them. Hey, you still with me? Carrie's voice broke into his thoughts. Sorry, I was lost in thought, he answered. Well, I hope you were thinking about dinner, she said, smiling. Jimmy chuckled. Dinner sounds like a great place to start. They both agreed to enjoy a quiet evening, putting aside their individual issues for now. Later, they walked to Carrie's cozy apartment near the Capitol building. Though not lavish, it was cozy, serving as her place to stay while she focused on her career. Carrie's bedroom was different from the rest. It had unique French Baroque-style furniture. It was a calm space at the back of the apartment, looking out over a quiet garden and small street. The rest of the building had offices for a lobbying firm. They spent the evening together, talking about work, life, and their dreams. It was a rare break from their busy lives, a time to reconnect and enjoy each other's company. He moved around her, showing his affection. He gently kissed her skin, letting his cheek brush softly against her. She responded with quiet sounds as he continued to show his care. Jimmy took his time, enjoying the moment and building anticipation. She put her glass down and guided his focus, wanting a deeper connection. The experience felt intense and satisfying for both, creating a bond that felt strong. Carrie liked a slow approach to feeling good, as it made everything more intense. When they finally reached that moment, it brought a mix of emotions. Their time together was about connection and trust, creating a sense of closeness that felt both comforting and exciting. Jimmy felt relaxed with her, enjoying every moment. Carrie, open about her romantic interests, held strong beliefs about loyalty and respect. She appreciated companionship, but had her standards, seeking partners who showed respect. "Will you go home to her tonight?" she asked softly while leaning against him. "I can't stay if that's what you mean." "I need to be at the office early," he replied. "Will you be with your wife tonight?" she asked, curious about his life. "We haven't been close since the last time she was away," he said quietly. "Why not? You can't still be upset with her," Carrie said, propping herself on one arm to look into his eyes. Jimmy thought about the question, reflecting on love and disappointment. "I suppose it's because I care about her a lot." Carrie lightly shook her head. "That sounds more like jealousy. If it was love, you would want her to be happy." "Is that what you and Raymond have? True love?" he asked. Carrie frowned slightly, wanting to avoid the topic about her partners. "Ray and I have an understanding. I'm still in a stage where I like to keep things open," she explained, giving an answer she often used. "But you want the recognition that comes with a relationship," he said, realizing her wishes. "Cynically put, but yes. Any more talk about Ray is off limits," she added, pulling away from deeper discussion. "Got it, but my situation is complicated. I wasn't living in a fairy tale. There were kids to take care of and bills to pay. Despite everything, I experienced a love story where affection triumphed." Carrie gave him a playful smile and shook her head. "You are a real mystery. A strong lawyer who dreams of being the hero in a romantic movie. Are you making fun of me?" "No, that's just a friend feeling for you," she said with true concern. She could see herself loving this man. Yet he made her feel unsure about the professional woman she wanted to be and the successful future she dreamed of having. Simone woke up early. Jimmy had come home late the night before, and even though he was freshly showered, she could still smell another woman's perfume on him. She chose to stay quiet. Her plan was to be silent and do everything she could to win him back. She just didn't know how. Today she was visiting the hospital. She had been away from her regular job for 8 months during her last assignment. It was time to show up and help out the team. She set up a meeting with the main hospital administrator, Ellen Perry, and the chief of medical staff, Dr. Clark. They held the meeting in Ellen's office, in a separate building across the street from the hospital. Ellen and Dr. Clark were very polite. Ellen was in her 60s, but surprisingly, Dr. Clark was only in his late 30s. They welcomed Simone and, over coffee, started what seemed like a friendly talk. However, after discussing Simone's work challenges in Africa, they reached the point where Simone expected them to ask when she would come back. Instead, there was silence. "Well, I plan to stay home for the rest of this week, but I can start back Monday if that's soon enough," Simone said. The silence hung in the air as the administrator looked at Dr. Clark. Finally, Ellen spoke. "This is hard for us, but the situation is unusual." She looked down at her empty coffee cup. Dr. Clark added, "There is no easy way to say this, but we believe your return would cause issues in the current situation." For a moment, Simone was confused. Then it became clear. "You think I might be carrying Ebola?" No, Clark said quickly. "But the public is very worried. Given what's happening, you're coming back." Clark's words trailed off, and Ellen stepped in to explain, "We just can't have you back until the fear goes down. Once things settle, we would love to have you return." "Return?" Simone asked. "Yes, we've temporarily held your credentials. For now, you're not able to work here," Ellen said. "But only until things calm down," Clark added. Simone felt shocked. She understood the fear that led to these choices. Ebola was a frightening illness. Even the actions of unkind politicians taking advantage of public worries made sense in a way. But these were trained medical experts who knew the actual risk was very small. Why would they exclude her for the sacrifices she made in her job and personal life? You know that if we don't control this disease now, everyone could be in danger. We need many medical workers to help fight this. Are you going to turn away all of them when they come back? And if you do, who will want to step up and help with this problem? Administrator Ellen replied quickly. That's not our concern. We run a hospital. Who would take their children to a place where there's even a small chance a doctor has a contagious disease? Simone came back home feeling shaken. She returned to the house where she had lived with the man she loved and where her 2 daughters were being raised, but not by her. Now she questioned what had happened to her life. She was certain she did the right thing by going to Africa, but in doing so, she felt she had lost everything. The job she loved was gone. The husband she cherished was with someone else. Did her daughters still care for her? Jimmy O'Reilly sat in court with a headache. It started after his meeting with his client, Sam Gill. The client felt good about the appeals court decision, but his mood changed when his lawyer mentioned that the local police might try to get his DNA through other ways. That can't be legal. The court said no, Gill speculated. Well, not quite. If they find your DNA somewhere else, then the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply. Looking at the court's decision, they will likely do just that. Judge Shaw, who led the 3-judge panel, wrote the decision. She believed the Fourth Amendment required new evidence strong enough to convince an independent investigator to look deeper. The older DNA didn't count, even though new tests were available. In other words, no new tests would be valid without some new proof linking Sam Gill to the case. But the police were eager to find a new connection. What can we do? I paid a lot for this. So, what's the plan? Gill's tone seemed to shift, hinting that he blamed his lawyer for his troubles. Jimmy felt sorry for him but didn't understand how this was his fault or what Gill was truly worried about. However, given his fees, it was possible Gill felt some resentment. I just thought that when you were detained, the state police didn't take your photo. At most, they have just a basic description of you. The local police have never seen you at all, Jimmy pointed out. So? Well, I'm thinking to collect your DNA, they might have to follow you, and that could get confusing. For example, think about someone who looks like you staying at your house and driving your car while you are away for work. Gill was unsure, so Jimmy explained his idea further. After hearing the plan, Gill saw its benefits. An investigator who looked somewhat like Gill would live at Gill's home for a few weeks while Gill was away for work. Jimmy expected Gill to complain about the hassle, but to his surprise, Gill was excited. This was unusual because most clients resisted such ideas, believing they should not be inconvenienced. They often thought it was the lawyer's job to meet their needs. But Gill seemed to welcome this plan as if it was what he wanted all along. 2 hours later, Jimmy was at the Albany Police Court to set a date for a trial. His current client had been caught over the legal limit for alcohol, leaning against the hood of his car outside a place with several shops. The police had questioned him, checked his balance, and charged him, even though he wasn't driving at that time. The prosecutors claimed he had been driving, which he admitted. The defense argued he had not driven while intoxicated. Most judges might drop the case early on, but due to rising worries about drunk driving, the district attorney was determined to show strength, leading to a trial date despite the evidence suggesting otherwise. In truth, the trial likely would not happen. The case would probably end with a plea deal for disorderly conduct since the client had been drinking and was found on the street. Feeling a headache coming on, Jimmy glanced to his right. 4 empty seats away, Stephen Fitzgerald was sitting. They nodded at each other. Stephen had earned the nickname Foxy in law school, not for any special legal talent, but for having a particularly charming girlfriend, which led to the name. Yet how appealing was that now, given Stephen's present situation? Some people envied Jimmy for being married to a successful doctor. Would they still feel that way now? Here he was, searching for a paycheck in a tricky case. 4 seats away, the lawyer for the biggest local case was also waiting in court. Why? Did Foxy's firm think little of him? Smart Jimmy and Foxy both seemed to be making the same mistakes. Being clever isn't enough in life. You also need some luck. Marrying the wrong person can leave you feeling stuck. Foxy worked for a big law firm, but he wasn't a partner and didn't seem likely to become one. Everyone was aware of Foxy's job troubles just as they knew about his personal issues. Jimmy also found it tough to get by while his wife was busy with work overseas. His challenges were well known, too. They call this a city, but it feels like a small town, he thought. Do you think we picked the wrong job? Foxy asked. Jimmy was lost in thought. He didn't notice Foxy approach. Actually, I'm thinking about a few things, Jimmy replied. Yeah, life is funny that way, Foxy said. Have you ever wondered what we're really doing? I'm not sure what you mean. Helping people. Is it for the innocent or the guilty? Both, I suppose. Have you ever defended a guilty person? Foxy asked. Not sure, maybe. Do you think that's a risk we take? But when you go after someone, you might end up punishing an innocent person. That feels like a bigger risk, Jimmy said. Maybe. I was just thinking about my wife, Jimmy admitted. And you think we both have a problem? Foxy asked, raising an eyebrow as if considering his words. In short, yes, Jimmy answered. That could be true, but a relationship problem only exists if you let it. Living with guilt can be tougher. It really depends on how a man sees himself. Their conversation felt like puzzles with no clear answers. Then, they were called into Jimmy's case, ending their unusual talk. In the following days, Jimmy wondered if Stephen knew about his worries or if Foxy was just trying to deal with his own. Both men were married to strong women who had successful careers. Their wives supported them, seeming to care. Yet both men felt uncertain about their futures as lawyers. Foxy hinted at a deeper connection. Were they both helping people in tough situations? By the time Jimmy left the courthouse, it was late afternoon. After being out all night, he decided to head home early to spend time with his daughters. You have to see Mom, his daughter Vicky said when he walked in. Her younger sister Beth stood beside her, nodding earnestly. Why? He asked, anxious about what he might hear. Since their mother returned, the girls had been taking the school bus home and enjoyed riding with their friends instead of waiting for their dad. It was nice to have their mom waiting at the door to welcome them, but today was different. They found her in her darkened bedroom, upset. She kept saying she was fine and would come down soon, but the girls struggled to understand why adults sometimes felt this way. Vicky sensed tension between her parents. She thought it might be because of her father. He was a big man, and while he loved his daughters, his oldest felt people often kept their distance. Her mother and aunts had been exceptions, but now it seemed her parents lacked the closeness they once shared. Dad, you need to help Mom. She's upstairs on her bed and she's upset, Vicky said. Jimmy rushed up the steps, worried about what had upset his wife. The room was dark with the curtains shut tight and no lights on. He turned on the bedside lamp and sat next to her on the bed. Simone was curled up, quietly crying into her pillow. He gently placed his hand on her shoulder. Can you tell me what's wrong? He asked. There was no answer, just the sound of her sniffles growing a bit louder. You're worrying the girls, he said. Is it something I've done? She turned to look at him slowly. They don't want me back. I've lost everything. My job, my husband, my home are all gone. And I don't know why. Jimmy took a moment to understand what had happened at the hospital. Finally, he said, We could think about legal action. Is that your answer? She replied sharply. Not really, but it's what I know, he said. I just want to understand why. We need to fight this illness to keep it from spreading. How can they treat us this way? Not all good people get noticed for their efforts. It's a hard world. Right now, your daughters need you downstairs. Try to be strong for them. And my husband? Jimmy understood how deep her question ran. How do they move on? He had thought about it often. Legally, he had filed for separation after she left 8 months ago, but he saw that as just a formal step he had to take. The bigger question was harder. I'm here, and that's all I can offer for now. What about her? Do you have feelings for her? She asked, wiping her tears as she sat up. Jimmy couldn't help but chuckle at the thought. He knew who she was talking about, and it was almost funny. That lady has a fiancé. She's not in love with me, and I'm not going to think about that, he replied with a smile. He nudged Simone gently. Now, wash your face and come downstairs. I'll order pizza. That should make the girls happy. The file sat on his desk unopened. He had asked his sister Tara to gather all the information she could about Mary Slatterly's death in Trenton, New Jersey, from about 15 years ago. Tara had given the task to one of her computer experts who worked part-time for her. She was busy with the arrival of her new baby, James Henry O'Reilly. Lisa had given birth 2 weeks early to a healthy baby boy. Jimmy's daughters were excited about their new cousin. A few adults knew that he was the donor for the lesbian couple. Jimmy tried to wrap his mind around being a father again. He thought that it would be foolish to ask a question whose answer might be in the file on his desk. Samuel Gill's guilt or innocence was not something he thought about. The man had every right to keep his DNA private. As a lawyer helping a client, Jimmy O'Reilly had to protect his client's interests. He opened the case file. Mary Slatterly was the third woman believed to be a victim of a possible serial killer. 3 women had been found strangled in their homes, with the murders happening about a month apart during the summer. The deaths were connected by an unusual murder weapon, an expensive stocking tightly wrapped around each victim's neck. Mary was the last victim, and it was uncertain whether it was a copycat crime. There was no solid proof linking Samuel Gill to the murders, except for Mary Slatterly's case. Gill was seen with Mary 2 days before her death at a local bar. They left together, but that night Gill said he was with friends in Newark. No evidence tied him to the murder. A little blood was found on a piece of a necklace. Mary had been strangled but showed no other signs of harm, suggesting the blood might have come from the attacker. Police believed that the killer could have cut his hand on the inexpensive necklace Mary wore. They only found part of the broken necklace, with little blood and the rest of it missing. It was a weak case, even if DNA could eventually match. However, there were no matches at that time. Over the years, Trenton police mentioned other murders that seemed connected, but the unique stocking was missing in those cases. The stockings were high-end nylon with seams but made in an old style. Other killings occurred with different kinds of stockings in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. Jimmy reasoned that this meant there was no reason to suspect Samuel Gill. Still, doubts lingered in his mind. Tara had arranged for someone to watch Sam Gill's house while pretending to be him. If asked, they would claim they were house-sitting for Gill, who was away. About 2 weeks after the appeals court made its decision, an unmarked car came by. My guy says they're not there all the time. They show up in the mornings, but they always arrive the night before the trash is picked up, Tara told Jimmy. Do you think they found anything? He asked. Not really. My guy has the lights set on a timer when he's not there. He puts out just enough trash to make it look normal every Wednesday night, but it stays in the garage, not at the curb. They continued their watch. One morning, a man matching Gill's description left his house. He drove Gill's car to the mall, where he picked up dry cleaning, went to the hardware store, and ended up at a fast food restaurant. He was careless, leaving his cup, wrappers, and leftover food on the table. I'm unsure what to do, Simone said. When I'm here, I feel bad I'm not there, and when I'm there, I feel bad about not being here. Dr. Ellen Blake had spent most of her first session with her new patient trying to learn more about her background. Dr. Swenson had sent the patient to her. They had previously attended couples counseling, which had involved trust issues, but now Ellen thought the problems were deeper. The notes from the marriage counseling indicated that the husband had been very unhelpful, which, in Ellen's experience, often led to challenges in therapy. However, the patient here was different. Simone O'Reilly was eager for support and ready to address her issues. It was Ellen's role to uncover the source of those issues. Can you tell me why you feel bad when you work overseas? Ellen asked. This was the easier of the 2 points of concern, and Ellen expected a straightforward answer. Instead, she was surprised by what Simone said. Simone explained the usual feelings of a mother away from her family, but her worry was mostly about her children. Guilt about her husband lingered, tied to her past decisions. Do you miss your husband when you're away? Ellen asked. Yes, I miss him a lot, but I don't feel guilty about it. I'm doing what I think is right, and I believe he supports my work. I feel guilty because I look for comfort from other men to help with his absence. There is nothing I offer that Jimmy needs. Why do you think that? Doesn't he need his wife? Simone let out a small, sad laugh. Jimmy needs someone? You don't know him. They ended the session there. It had been a fruitful meeting. Simone went home right away. She had set up a way to text her friend Claire Hudson in Liberia. The two had been friends for many years. Simone missed her friend even more now that she was facing her own issues. When they connected, neither woman bothered with small talk. Claire quickly asked how her family was doing. She had 3 sons and a husband she had left behind. Simone reassured her friend that as far as she knew, her husband and boys were doing okay. I call and email whenever I can, but you never really know. You know how men can be. They hide things until it's too late, Claire said. Declan Hudson was a big man, a mechanic known for his quiet nature and kind heart. Simone understood Claire's worries were twofold. Her sons missed their mother and Declan was far away. Don't worry, the boys are fine, and Declan isn't seeing anyone. But what about Arthur? Claire laughed. Arthur is out of the picture, went off to Nigeria. I hope you don't mind, but I've started a relationship with Ben. You left him all alone, and it would be a shame to let someone like that go to waste. Well, I do care. He was my friend. You weren't really depending on him, and besides, you have Jimmy to keep you company. Not when he won't share a bed with me. Still upset, is he? I'm not sure, but he does have that rival situation. I can't believe you are letting that go on. He cares about you, and we both know you can win anyone over, so try to show him some kindness and rebuild that bond. Has it come to the point that I need to win back my own husband? Yes, and do it soon before he finds someone else. Look, my time is up, but email me when you can. After Claire left, Simone felt a wave of relief. Talking to her was more helpful than any therapy session. Jimmy O'Reilly was a man, and even if their relationship seemed complicated, it was time for her to face it. That's a strange request, Rebecca said. She was a smart, though impatient young woman. A graduate of Cornell Law School, she had worked for the O'Reilly firm the summer before last. After finishing her studies, she took the bar exam and returned home to care for her sick father, an act of love that sometimes made her question her own career choices. Who's in charge here? Jimmy asked. You are, but why ask a law grad to look for such odd items? I have my reasons. Just find out who sells high-end vintage stockings, the kind with a small hole in them. A keyhole in the welt? She asked. What's that? That's what it's called. It happens during the sewing process. Good. Find out if anyone here sells them. And then? Come back, and we will put that Cornell education of yours to good use. Jimmy knew his law clerk was annoyed with the task, but he preferred not to bring in others. Even asking felt strange, but his conscience was unsure. He was troubled by his recent talk with Foxy Fitzgerald, especially since the clearly guilty Roger Hamilton had been found not guilty of harming his wife. Foxy had performed a courtroom miracle. The immediate media reaction was disbelief. As the details emerged about how Foxy had swayed the court and the jury, disbelief turned to anger. A rich man had escaped justice. The courts were seen as unfair, and defense lawyers faced criticism. Maybe in this case, the media and the public were correct. The Trenton police were looking for a serial killer who harmed women. A skilled attorney named James O'Reilly had gotten involved. It was essential to ensure his actions were right, not just legally appropriate. Simone was waiting for him at home. Their daughters had gone to her mother's for the night. She wore a lovely tea dress, both pretty and modest. I made beef stew with sour cream biscuits for dinner, she said. It was an old favorite from when they were newly married. A Hungarian neighbor had taught it to Simone when they lived in their first apartment. The neighbor was an older woman who had recently lost her husband. The stew was like goulash, but more suited to American taste. The tasty smell came from the kitchen and brought back a sweet memory. Jimmy could picture the older woman and his young wife working together at the small kitchen stove. He smiled quietly. His wife was wonderful. As soon as he found out the girls were away, he knew Simone would want to reconnect. She had been hinting for days about better times in their past. The table was set for 2, with candles lit and a bottle of wine ready. Jimmy picked up the wine bottle as Simone entered the dining area with the hot casserole dish. What? Know you're red? he joked, thinking of the cheap wine they used to enjoy as newlyweds. Simone laughed. You know they didn't have it. I got as close as I could. She paused, tilting her head thoughtfully. Am I a bit too open? She asked. Only to me, he replied. They sat down, and as he poured the wine, she filled their plates. She raised her glass to his and said, To our love. To our love, he repeated. The meal was delicious, filling not just his stomach but his spirit. He admired his wife's beauty across the table, reminding himself that her true value was much deeper. She was genuinely kind and dedicated to her work. Her trips to Africa were more than just personal choices. They were responses to real needs in those communities. Though she might not have been outwardly brave, she faced her daily challenges with quiet strength, even while dealing with her own worries. Maybe that is what true courage means, feeling scared, but still holding firm. Jimmy realized that he often fell short when compared to Simone. His fears were about tomorrow, running out of money, or being found out for failing what others expected. His anxieties were unclear but always present, yet he pushed forward, never looking side to side, but always ahead. He ran toward the fire, knowing that turning away would lead to disaster. What people saw as bravery was actually a deep fear. It can't work, he said. We can't go back to how things used to be. Simone offered a sad smile, twisting her glass gently. I didn't think we could return to that, but maybe we can remember the good times as we find a way forward. What do you want from me? He asked. Understanding. I know I've hurt you, but can we find a way to forgive? She reached across the table and touched his sleeve gently. My issue isn't understanding. I understand you needed someone to lean on. You always cared. But I can't be there when you need me the most. So you find someone who can. Does it hurt? Yes, a lot. But I forgave you almost right after you told me what happened. I'm really sorry. I see the hurt in your eyes, but I need to ask, what do we do now? I'm not sure. Your job is far away. You could stay here, but you wouldn't be happy. I can't go away with you. I have my job and the kids to think about. They are my kids, too. Yes, but they understand your work. When you're with them, you're truly there. These past weeks have been good for them. They have a mom at home and they like it. But they are growing up and will soon be independent. You should spend as much time as you can with them while also living your own life. What about my husband? I've been trying to fix something that's clearly lost. I hoped counseling would help, but it hasn't worked for me. Simone nodded quietly. Jimmy found it hard to share his feelings, to show the hurt child inside him who was affected by his wife's betrayal. Simone walked around the table, hugged her husband tightly, and said, I love you so much. When the call came, it wasn't a surprise. Samuel Gill was in eastern Massachusetts, far from his lawyer's office and the police who were investigating him. He had been avoiding them and had only one question for his lawyer. Is it safe to relax now? Well, they have collected evidence, but the explanation was complicated. On TV, it looked easy for the police to gather evidence. In reality, it was much harder. Each piece of evidence might have several DNA samples, and not every sample would be useful. The police were looking for a DNA sample that could match the person they thought was Sam Gill. They might not find a complete DNA match, but could find something that could connect to the evidence from the scene. It would be a sign that there was enough new evidence to convince a separate investigator to look closer. Gill didn't think the substitute for him would match at all. Jimmy couldn't help but draw that conclusion. They are still testing the evidence. It may take time, Jimmy said. How will we know? I think when they stop checking your trash, that will be a good sign. There were many legal rulings stating that trash left out for pickup was considered abandoned and could be searched without permission. But Gill lived in Bethlehem, where there was no city trash service. A private collector came once a week. Until then, Gill kept his trash in the garage to keep the local raccoons away. It was still in Gill's control, passing from him to a private company. In theory, Gill's trash was safe from police checks, but that was just a theory. The state police found out about the waste company he hired, which was a small business run by two brothers. The trash collectors agreed to keep Gill's trash separate until it reached the city dump. Don and Andy Bugnano didn't mind helping the state police. They were a struggling pair who kept facing one hardship after another. What the state police did not know was that they were also working with Jimmy O'Reilly. They kept Gil's trash separate, but told his lawyer about every police search. Yes, I would say when they stop searching the trash, you can relax, or you could just give them a clean sample of your real DNA. Why would I do that? Prove you didn't do anything wrong. Sam Gill laughed. That's why I'm paying you. I'm innocent. You did offer to give them a sample once. I said I would send them a sample, not necessarily mine. I see, and you think I should stay quiet? You're my lawyer. That's your job. True, I can't speak, O'Reilly said. I'll keep you informed about the trash. Jimmy sat and thought that morning, and by afternoon, he felt he had to act. He knew it wasn't right, but he couldn't let Gil escape justice. So what did you find out about the stockings, Rebecca? No one sells them here. You can get them in New York City or Boston, and of course online. Great. Take the money you need from petty cash and take the train to the city. I need you back with the stockings by Wednesday evening. Rebecca looked worried. Are you sure about this? She asked. Yes. Use cash and be back by Wednesday evening. Jimmy left work early. It was surprising how handling a big case could take away the joy from his job. When he got home, he saw a rental Chevy parked in the driveway behind his wife's car. His 2 daughters were in the family room, watching Frozen on the big TV their aunts had given them. He found his wife, Simone, in the living room with their guests. A tall young man and a younger woman sat on the sofa. The woman leaned into the man as they chatted with Simone. Oh, good, you're home, Simone said. We have guests. I can see, Jimmy replied, noticing the discomfort in the way Simone and the man behaved. The woman broke the silence. Hi, sorry to drop in, but we were on our way home and couldn't just pass by. Ben flew into Montreal and came in through Plattsburgh, Simone added. Rouse's Point, Ben corrected. It's easier than flying straight home with the travel rules. Jimmy, this is Ben Robinson and his fiancée Amani. Ben and I worked together in Liberia, Simone said. With that, Jimmy sensed the tension in the room. He had surprised his wife with guests, one of whom she clearly knew well. He glanced at the man. He was tall and fit, with a pleasant appearance. Jimmy caught himself comparing himself to this man and quickly stopped. He noticed Amani looking at him thoughtfully. She was small but had a lively presence. There was sharp intelligence in her dark eyes. I'm glad I got home early, Jimmy said, trying to sound cheerful. They had coffee and some cake. Amani chose tea. Simone had served it all on nice china. Amani sat close to her friend. Jimmy offered some wine, but it was politely turned down. We have a bit of a drive ahead of us tonight. We're flying out of JFK to Atlanta tomorrow afternoon, Ben said. Then why not stay over? We have a guest room. You can drive down tomorrow morning for your flight. It would be easier than stopping further down, Jimmy suggested. Ben hesitated, but Amani said, Thank you. That is very kind. It's been a long day for us. Good, let's go out to eat. Let's go out to... The girls will love it, and Ben and Simone can have more time to talk, Jimmy said. Amani thought that was a great idea, but insisted on splitting the bill. They ended up at an affordable Italian restaurant just across the county line. When Simone took the girls to the restroom, Ben excused himself as well, leaving Jimmy and Amani alone. You don't approve, Amani said, sipping her Chianti. Jimmy understood what she meant and considered avoiding the topic but decided against it. I know my wife seeks comfort when she's away, but I've never met any of her friends before. Is that how you see it? Seeking comfort? She asked. Do you see it differently? Yes. Everyone needs someone to rely on, especially in tough times. A person needs a friend, and there's comfort in companionship during hard moments. And you're not jealous? He inquired. That doesn't mean I'm not. Your wife is very pretty. And your fiancé is charming. Don't forget, he's skilled at what he does, she said with a smile. We both have our worries. But, he asked, yes, there's a catch. You can't help feeling some jealousy, but who wants the person they love to feel alone? My Ben has come back to me, and it seems your wife is there for you. So, what's my problem? Exactly. Jimmy paused. It was the question he had been asking himself. He was no child, but a man not given to being overly sentimental. At that moment, he was standing up for someone in a serious situation. As the well-known Foxy Fitzgerald had said, defending the accused was a risk he had chosen to take. So why was he taking such a strong stance about the woman he cared for? "I guess I miss the innocence we used to have," he finally said. Amani thought about this and then smiled. "It's not about what you lose in life, but what you gain from living. You may have lost the girl, but I believe you now have the woman." When Simone came out of the restroom with her daughters, Ben was waiting for her. "Vicky, take your sister back to the table," Simone told her oldest daughter. Vicky gave Ben a questioning glance but replied, "Okay, Mom." Once they were alone, Ben said, "I didn't want to cause any problems. I just wanted to check on you, and Amani needed some reassurance that it's over between us. She talks a lot, but I think she's a little worried. I understand. Jimmy knows about the choices I made while I'm away. He just can't seem to accept them. I hope things improve soon. I wish you the best with Amani. I think it will work out, but is there anything I can do to help your situation? Let's head back. That's a start." As Simone returned to the table, she expected a cold reception, but everyone seemed relaxed and happy. Beth was explaining the plot of Frozen to Amani, whom both girls had liked. Even Ben appeared calm, while Jimmy helped his youngest daughter share the story of her favorite movie. For a moment, Simone thought, they felt like a normal family. If only this could last. The community was stunned by Roger Hamilton's acquittal. Many were quick to blame when a clearly guilty man was set free. Most of the blame, however, was directed at the tricky tactics of the defense attorney known as Foxy. Fitzgerald didn't help his image by avoiding the cameras after the verdict and sneaking out of the courthouse. Foxy didn't stay in the spotlight long, as he was soon outshined by the shocking news of Samuel Gill's arrest, a suspect who had been living among the innocent people of Van Patten County. O'Reilly was involved, as Assistant Attorney General Eric Schwartz claimed, for his actions related to the suspect Sam Gill. Attorney O'Reilly crossed a line when he told Gill to use a substitute. Additionally, his work with the Waste Management Company, where new evidence came to light, is clearly a conflict of interest, Eric explained. The Buonono brothers are longtime clients of James O'Reilly, and they are important witnesses regarding the new evidence. "Is this true, Counselor?" the judge asked Jimmy. "Yes, Your Honor. Coincidentally, I represent the witnesses Don and Andy Buonono as well as the petitioner Samuel Gill. I advised my client to be careful while he was away from home. However, I don't see how asking for Mr. Gill's DNA is reasonable. Finding a pair of stockings in the trash is not new evidence." "Your Honor." Eric started to speak. "That's fine, Mr. Schwartz. You can stop, as I am inclined, based on the previous decision from the appellate court, to agree with the state's recent request. Assuming Mr. Buonono and his brother's statements support the state's view that the special women's stockings taken from the trash can be linked back to Samuel Gill, I need to remove Mr. O'Reilly from the case because he represents both the witnesses and the accused. The state's request for a new test relies on the witnesses that are represented by the defense attorney. There is a conflict of interest, regardless of guilt. However, I don't see any issue with Mr. O'Reilly's actions. He couldn't have known that the police wanted to search Mr. Gill's garbage. Neither the judge nor Eric thought this was anything more than a typical legal process. It was just a common legal tactic for the public's sake. No one thought that Jimmy was actually involved, that he played a role and was not just a lawyer. With Mr. O'Reilly no longer on Samuel Gill's defense team, the public, particularly the prosecutors, felt relieved. The well-known defense attorney was out of the picture. The evidence from the trash would be allowed, and Mr. Gill would have to provide his DNA. No one talked about earlier attempts by the police to get Gill's DNA from thrown-away items, which had not worked because there was no match. Carrie Wilson observed the public response to her former partner with interest. This situation raised questions, but the reasons were a bit confusing. Jimmy was clever enough to avoid being easily caught. But Anthony Greco had another worry. "Is this person still the special prosecutor in that correction case?" he asked, rushing into her office with the latest article about defense lawyers. "Actually, I have Jimmy O'Reilly's final report ready to send out. The special counsel matter is settled and well within budget. Carrie said. Good, the governor needs to stay away from this defense lawyer. Did you know he was their teacher? I thought it was just the issue with Fitzgerald, but the governor seems to have had O'Reilly as a student too, Tony said as he sat down. Carrie knew about the governor's connections to the lawyers involved. He often spoke about it, particularly proud of coaching Fitzgerald in mock trials. Tony's dislike for Fitzgerald was clear, reflecting one man's bitterness towards another's success. Carrie waited for Tony to move on, but he stayed in her office. Is there something else? She asked. Well, actually, I want your thoughts on something, he replied, pausing for a moment. She waited for him to go on, but an uncomfortable silence settled in until he finally continued. I'm planning to ask Susan to the governor's ball at the mansion. You mean Mrs. Fitzgerald? She goes by the name Singleton now, and I'm hoping soon she'll be Mrs. Anthony Greco. I see. Is she getting a divorce? Carrie asked, surprised she hadn't heard about this before. We haven't talked about it, but I think that will happen once I propose. Wait, are you saying you want to propose to a woman who is still with her husband? Tony looked a bit unsettled. He believed no woman would choose Fitzgerald over him. I know Susan. She needs someone who can truly make her happy. Once she realizes I'm serious, and what if she isn't? Serious, you mean? He asked. Yes. What if she doesn't feel the same? Then she'll come around once she knows we have a future together, Tony replied confidently. Well, if you're set on this, what's your question? Carrie asked. How important do you think it is for me to bring her to the governor's ball without her husband? Yes, of course. You can't exactly ask her to start fresh with her husband there, Carrie said, thinking through the potential issues. The governor just hired her as his PR consultant. It won't look good if she is caught in a scandal right away, Tony said. No, but she knows PR. I'm sure she can find a reasonable way to explain her husband's absence. And let's be honest, neither of you will be the focus at the ball. The spotlight will be on the governor and the various politicians and celebrities. Will the governor like it? Maybe not, but it will hardly be the major issue on his mind, Carrie concluded. Anything else? She asked. No, that's all, Tony said as he prepared to leave. After he left, Carrie reflected on the situation. She decided she should prepare for any problems. She would add Mr. and Mrs. Fitzgerald to the guest list, but have the ball's secretary hold the invitation until the event started. Then, she got an idea. Why not invite the James O'Reillys? Simone O'Reilly had made a name for herself, and the governor had publicly supported the returning healthcare workers. A picture of him dancing with one would be a great way to boost his image. The public's concern had lessened in recent months, and now the governor could benefit from his brave position. I wonder what Jimmy will look like in formal wear, she thought. It was officially known as the governor's reception and dance to celebrate the major renovations made to the Victorian governor's mansion along Eagle Street in Albany. Though it was supposedly home to New York's governors, very few had actually lived there for more than a night. Most of New York's governors lived in New York City. When they had to spend the night in Albany, they found better places to stay than that old, uncomfortable building. The mansion had a reputation for being haunted, but it was just an old, run-down place that made noises due to age and many poorly done repairs. It creaked and groaned in the night until Governor Kincaid decided it needed fixing. Halfway through his 4-year renovation, he decided to throw a party. This was not for fun, but to kick off his campaign for president. That was the place he really wanted to call home. Kincaid was happy to hear that his new public relations consultant was arriving. She brought clever ideas to his campaign and was a DeVoe on her mother's side, meaning she came from an influential family. She was also the daughter of Joe Singleton. The DeVoe had old money, while the Singletons were more recent arrivals in wealth. Susan DeVoe Singleton knew many wealthy people in what is called the Empire State. Although her husband was away, it didn't matter much. Stephen Fitzgerald didn't add much to any gathering. His recent fame might help his career, but he wasn't the best choice for social events. The same went for O'Reilly, who would get attention because the governor would be photographed with Dr. Simone O'Reilly, who had just returned from Africa. He planned to chat with her about her experiences, hoping to share a memorable quote about her recent time in quarantine. The governor's ball was set to launch his campaign for the presidency. Carrie was happy with the preparations and didn't realize the changes coming her way. She would attend the event with her fiancé, Raymond Emerson. They would take pictures together, but when the cameras were off, Raymond would be more interested in Assembly Majority Leader Jose Martin Prez, a charming man from the Bronx. Ema Martin Prez, who used to be known as Miss Ema Klein, was an impressive presence, quickly drawing people's attention. Her husband had kept her away from the tougher parts of their fast-paced world. Raymond had a lot of dealings with the Martin Prez family, but he kept his distance during the first hour of the celebration. Susan Singleton arrived with Anthony Greco, turning heads in her beautiful black gown and bright emerald necklace. She greeted the governor, both noting how sorry they were that her husband could not be there. "He's away on important business. Another tough trial," Susan explained. The governor offered his sympathies and took a moment to mention that he had been Foxy's former teacher, complimenting her obvious talent. They moved on, with the governor greeting guests while Susan mingled with her wealthy friends and family, with Greco quietly following behind. The O'Reillys arrived soon after Susan, just before the mayor came, signaling the band to start playing. The musicians were ready, and Carrie had picked the music, planning for 2 sets of 90 minutes each, with breaks for speeches and conversations. Each set started with a mix of fast and slow songs, but halfway through, they would switch to mostly slow and sweet melodies. An hour into the first dance set, Tony Greco asked Susan to join him in the garden. Carrie had been watching from afar. Ray was dancing with Mrs. Martin Prez. It was their first dance of the night, but not their last. Carrie took the chance to help facilitate a dance between Simone and the governor. While the photographers captured the governor dancing with the lovely doctor, who had faced tough challenges from his political opponents, Carrie took the moment to dance with the doctor's husband. "My turn, Jimmy," Carrie said, and he quickly hugged her closer. "That feels nice," she said. "And you look lovely," he replied. Carrie wore a beautiful silver dress that highlighted her style. She chose it carefully, knowing that Jimmy's wife would be there. Simone O'Reilly picked a more modest green gown, which was different from Carrie's choice. Although Simone looked elegant, she had the air of a supportive partner. It was a light-hearted competition between them, like a friendly game. After Simone finished her dance with the governor, she was quickly swept away by another partner. "Did you plan this?" Jimmy asked Carrie. "The reason I invited you was to show our support for your wife's brave work. The politicians all want their dance and their picture," Carrie replied, "and I get to enjoy some time with her husband." Carrie led Jimmy through a side door into the garden. It was a dark night, but the area sparkled with lights from the state capitol's South Mall, which was made up of office buildings and a uniquely designed theater. "My goodness, it's beautiful on a night like this," Jimmy said. "That was Rocky's plan," Carrie agreed. Nelson Rockefeller had built the grand and somewhat impractical mall, a small city within Albany. The scale felt huge. Its structures towered impressively, yet it was certainly a sight to admire, even if best appreciated from a distance. As Jimmy started to speak, Carrie gently pressed her fingers to his lips, guiding him aside. Over her shoulder, he noticed a tall couple lit by the soft lights of the mall. They seemed to be having a special moment, and he would have recognized them anywhere. Fitzgerald and Tony Greco. When they were far enough away, Carrie said, "Tony's making his proposal." "Proposal?" "He's asking her to marry him." "I might be mistaken, but isn't that Stephen Fitzgerald's wife?" "It is, but Tony doesn't see that as a problem." "Then I would say he's both brave and a bit foolish," Jimmy whispered. "You think Foxy will mind?" she asked. "I imagine he'll do a bit more than mind. But I have a different question for you. What will Mrs. Martin Prez do when she discovers her husband and your fiancé together?" Carrie covered her mouth to hold back a laugh. "So you noticed. The playfulness between the wife and your man was clever, but not very convincing. This raises an important question. Why were they acting that way? The truth is clear, so how long have you known, and who else is involved?" "Ema knows and plays her part like I do," Carrie explained. "Ray and the assemblyman go back to Ray's school days. We act as a couple for our mutual benefit. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but I never thought we would get this serious." Jimmy tried to catch a glimpse of her eyes in the dim light, but it only brought them closer in that moment. "I'm sorry, love," she continued. "I've misled you. Ray and I are good friends, He needed a cover, and I needed help from his connections. It got me onto the governor's staff. But my current job is because of my own work." Jimmy could only shake his head. It made so much sense now. He thought quietly and let her words sink in. "Do you think we are serious?" "Yes, I didn't plan it like this, but I believe it has happened." The music stopped inside, and some guests began to wander out. Carrie pulled away from Jimmy. "I better go act like the governor's assistant until the music starts again," she said. Jimmy watched her leave, and as he did, he saw Susan step away from Greco and go back inside. "Mrs. Fitzgerald doesn't seem very happy," he thought. But just then Simone came walking out. She looked around until she found Jimmy standing to the side of the garden. As she walked up to him, Simone nodded toward the office buildings of the mall and said, "Quite a view. Have you been enjoying the scenery?" "Yes," he replied, "and other things. Are you done dancing with the important people or just taking a break?" "The music has stopped, but when it starts again, I would like to dance with my husband," she said, taking his arm. "I would love that," he replied. "Really?" "Yes, really." "Jimmy, I asked before, but I'm asking again. Do you love Carrie?" He held back a quick reply and thought about her question. He hadn't loved the person he thought Carrie was, but that person wasn't real. This woman was young, keeping a secret from everyone. He could care for that girl if he were free, but was he free? He looked at his wife and said, "No, I don't love her, but I would if I didn't love you." "I just can't see myself loving two women at the same time." Simone nodded somberly. She didn't like his answer. "It's a nice night, so different from the nights in Africa, but also familiar. On a night like this, I want to be with you more than anything," she said. "But we both know you won't stay with me. You will go back to Africa or somewhere alike because that's where you belong," he said. She held his arm tightly and leaned in to whisper, "I'm so sorry." He leaned closer and gently wiped away the tears forming in her eyes. I know," he whispered back. The music started to play again. He wrapped his arms around her and said, "Come on, you owe me a dance or two." Ray Emerson took his fiancée home to her apartment on State Street. They shared this place like they shared his in the Chelsea neighborhood of Manhattan. In a way, they did share the apartments, but not the beds. "Tired?" Ray asked, noticing Carrie looked worn out. "Yes, no matter how well you plan, there is always so much to do, and things can go wrong if you don't keep on top of them," she replied. "Is your boyfriend one of those problems?" he asked. "You almost sound jealous." "Concerned for you. He seemed very involved with his wife. She's a beautiful woman, but in that dress you look even more stunning." "Thanks, I didn't think you noticed." "Is he good to you?" Ray asked, genuinely worried. "He treats me well, and beneath his tough exterior, he's kind," she said. "Who represents serious offenders," Ray added as he poured himself a small drink from the bottle in the kitchen. Carrie was making herself a cup of herbal tea. Their drinks were meant to help them unwind after a tense evening. Carrie had enjoyed 2 glasses of wine, while Ray had stuck to soda. As Carrie fiddled with the tea kettle, she had a moment to think. "I'm not sure where Jimmy stands on that case. Yes, he fought the DNA test, but something seems off about the arrest. He's too smart to let his client be caught like that unless," she said, pouring her tea. "You know something?" Ray asked. "No, but I suspect he may have had something to do with the item found in the trash." "How do you think that?" "I can't be sure, but planting it would be something he might do," she guessed. "That's a risky move if he got caught." "Yes, but if I know Jimmy, he never plans to get caught. He sounds like your type of guy." "Oh, he is, but men like him are too costly for women in my line of work. Are you trying to convince me or yourself?" "Maybe both of us," she replied. "Look, I want you to know that if you ever need to end our arrangement, just let me know," Ray said. She could tell he was sincere. Carrie smiled gently at him and said, "Well, that won't be tonight or any time soon. I need some sleep now." Their story had started in a surprising way. John Martin was well known in the field of mass legal cases. As a lawyer with mixed heritage, he had used his significant earnings to get an important political position in the Bronx. Now called Jose Martin Prez, he had stepped back from practicing law and was teaching at Yale. His class on mass torts was very popular and only allowed 15 students each semester. Carrie Wilson was a first-year law student at Yale, the top law school in the country. She needed to choose one elective course for her spring semester. Carrie had been a standout student in college, graduating with high honors from Wellesley. Law school felt overwhelming to her, like being splashed with cold water. The workload was heavy, demanding about 60 hours a week of classes and studying. This she could handle. What bothered her was the environment, which felt full of hypocrisy and a bit of cynicism, promoting behaviors it often criticized while chasing bigger funding. For the spring term, she was expected to take a clinic to gain real experience at a legal aid office, which would help the law school appear supportive of the community. Her classmates were eager to argue cases and take on meaningful work, but Carrie wanted to focus on politics, which seemed like a more socially aware path. The Martin Prez seminar offered her the chance to explore politics while avoiding clinic work, at least for her first year. Carrie's torts professor, who also graduated from Wellesley, recommended her for the Mass Torts seminar. Still, Carrie had to go through an interview to get into the sought-after class taught by the tall, attractive, and very single professor. The one conducting the interview was Ray Emerson, the equally charming teaching assistant to the Honorable Martin Prez. Ray interviewed Carrie at the law school coffee shop. While having lattes, he asked her questions but mostly enjoyed talking to her as a bright student. Coffee turned into a date, and then another. Although Carrie graduated with honors from Wellesley, her all-girls education did not prepare her for dating. She had a brief and tough relationship over spring break that hadn't gone as she wished. Despite her efforts, Carrie often found herself with partners who were more interested in themselves than in her. Athletes were too focused on their images, and tech lovers were often absorbed in their devices. Then she met Ray, a true gentleman who treated her with kindness and humor, making her feel truly valued. He was caring without being pushy. Carrie dated Ray throughout the spring term. They didn't become intimate, but she was too innocent to worry about it. Ray and the assemblyman arranged a summer internship for her. She had a small room in the university dorm in Albany. They paid her a little money to make copies and sort mail for the Assembly Education Committee. She also helped the junior assembly members who didn't have much support. Martin Prez's wealth had already made him an important person. Ray was the assemblyman's right-hand man. Their office was in a unique-looking legislative building. Back then, the upper halls looked a bit worn down, but Martin Prez had turned his office into a stylish space with leather and wood. Ray's office was smaller than his boss's, but everyone who met the assemblyman greeted Ray first. There was an exception to this. Carrie was early for once. It was the third week in August. The legislature had taken a break 4 weeks before, after dealing with a school funding issue. New York relied on an outdated way of funding public education primarily through property taxes. The state provided some help, but that led to many lawsuits from New York City, which the state lost, making the situation even worse. The team working in the Capitol for the Assembly Education Committee finally had everything ready for the next legislative session. Carrie finished early on her last Friday of the internship. Soon, she would return to the busy life of law school. But first, she wanted to grab Ray for a fun summer weekend at Lake George. They had plans to enjoy the big lake at the southeastern corner of the Adirondacks. Lake George was a beautiful place for young people to relax and have fun. The elevator took her quickly to the 10th floor in the nearly empty building. Assemblyman Martin Prez's outer office was vacant. The chairs were pushed in at the desks and the computers were turned off. Carrie knocked and turned the handle, finding Ray's office was also empty. She was deciding whether to sit and wait for him or call his cell phone when she heard a noise coming from the assemblyman's inner office. Jose Martin Prez was supposed to be in Martha's Vineyard with his new girlfriend, the model Emma Klein. Maybe Ray's just working out, she thought, remembering the fancy bike the assemblyman kept in the corner of his office. Making a choice she would later regret, she decided to peek into the inner office. There was indeed a workout happening. Ray was involved in some activity at the desk. He had one hand holding Ray's hair gently and the other hand in a firm hold. "Whose are you?" John whispered softly to Ray. "Yours. Always yours," Ray answered. They were so lost in their moment that they didn't see the door open. The young woman's shocked face quickly turned to a hurried look as she closed the door again. Carrie rushed from the office. The sound of the front door closing caught their attention, but by the time they noticed, she was already 5 floors down. She didn't stop until she reached the large lobby. As she entered the chilly space, tears streamed down her face. This grand area had once been a setting for important moments, but now it felt like a place for her to mourn a lost love. Carrie hadn't realized how deep her feelings had grown. She hadn't planned her life step by step. She went to law school because it was expected of her. She chose government work over practicing law to avoid its harshness. She had fallen for someone good to escape the unkindness of others. Now what was left for her? Esther Markowitz was a long-serving state senator. After representing her East Side Manhattan community for over 30 years, she was ready to retire. She would not run for office again. The candidates looking to take her place were already clashing, even though the primary election was still far away. Esther had faced these tough political battles many times throughout her career. Now, as her departure approached, she felt herself softening. Maybe that's why she paused when she saw the young woman crying. "Can I help?" Esther asked Carrie, who was clearly upset. "No, no one can help me now," Carrie whispered, trying to stop her tears. "Oh, that's not true. Come have a cup of tea in my office. It's a nice place, the result of many years of hard work," Esther said with a light laugh. Esther gently took Carrie's arm and led her to her welcoming office on the 4th floor, a comforting space compared to the more formal office Carrie had just left. There, Esther made tea and offered tissues to help Carrie dry her eyes. "You're the girl Ray Emerson has been showing around, aren't you?" Esther asked. Carrie simply nodded. "Did you see or hear something you shouldn't have?" Another nod from Carrie. "Oh dear, to be young and feel such heartache," Esther said with a small sigh. Carrie looked up and met Esther's gaze. "Try to understand, dear. The charming and wealthy John Martin can present himself however he likes. He can appear in parades, but he doesn't show his true self in a neighborhood made up of many diverse communities. I feel like such a fool. I should have known. Don't think like that. We smart women often struggle with understanding men. It seems like some kind of rule that says, we're good at many things, but not with guys. Maybe it's just life's way of balancing things out. You said My first husband, Mr. Markowitz, a well-known real estate agent, treated the not-so-attractive girl who was the top graduate of her class at Queens College to nice dinners. He was 15 years older than me and made me feel special. After 5 years of a marriage without kids, I found out the truth. Quite a revelation, right? In my defense, I was a good Jewish girl and a virgin on my wedding night, and he was very kind. I honestly thought my mother had given me the wrong idea about what marriage was. We did have some shared moments, but they were brief, and neither of us truly enjoyed them. But, Carrie asked, recalling what she had heard. Esther smiled knowingly. Oh, we eventually had children, 2 boys and a girl. They just weren't his biologically. The great thing about being Jewish is that only the mother's faith matters. If a mother is Jewish, her child is too. What do you mean? Carrie asked. John or Jose, or whatever he goes by now, is a wealthy and influential man. He can secure your future just like my husband, Henry Markowitz, did for me. Henry supported my early steps into politics, helping me get into the Assembly and then the State Senate. He needed my support. 40 years ago, things were very different for someone who didn't fit in. Ray and his boss need you. Stop feeling sorry for yourself and be helpful. The world you want to be a part of is tough. Remember this advice and take every chance you get. But what about love? Carrie pressed. You have to seek it out and work for it. Henry Markowitz was a fair man, but I never truly loved him, not like I love my second husband. I had to keep searching until I found love. It's not like in the movies where everything happens easily. I found my Charlie a few years into my political journey. He wasn't the most handsome man, but he had a good heart. He would do anything for his family. Yes, I met many people before I found him, Esther said, appearing thoughtful as she reminisced. But how did you know? You had been misled before, Carrie asked. It wasn't a magical moment. It was a hot August evening when a cool breeze came from the ocean. We were on a park bench. He wrapped his arm around me, and I placed my hand in his. When I felt his strong hand, it was like discovering security for the first time, and I knew I would hold on forever. We had twins, 2 girls together. It wasn't easy. I needed medical assistance to get pregnant. I was a little older than him, 5 years older to be exact. I had built a solid position in politics and had my own influence. By then, Henry was glad to see me go. Times had changed, and while people knew, they chose to stay quiet. I'm not sure, Carrie pondered. Take your time and don't rush into anything. Think about your choices and embrace any opportunities. Everyone who has talked about you has said good things. Those at the bottom cannot pay you back for what you have done, except by telling others your name. You have earned a good name quickly, don't throw it away. But I must leave now to get home before dark. It's Friday, and I have a long way to go. With that, Esther showed Carrie out, pausing to give her a warm hug as they left the legislative building. Raymond awaited her in the university dorm room she was renting. He looked worried, thinking about whether it had been her in the outer office and what she might know. He felt a mix of hope and fear, wishing it was her so he could manage what she understood. Carrie did not make him wait long. By the time she crossed Albany to the university campus on Western Avenue, she had decided to follow Esther's guidance. Ray felt relieved but troubled. Guilt shadowed him, along with the sadness of what he thought was the loss of her respect. Carrie reassured him, but she was smart enough to say that if their relationship was to continue, honesty was necessary. She approached her meeting with John Jose differently. By the time Carrie met the man after the incident, she had prepared herself. She understood the relationship between the two men, the older one who was in charge, and the younger one who was more flexible. The assembly leader and his aide had a complex but professional bond. Now experienced, Carrie met the influential Jose Martin Perez, the assembly majority whip, and began to explain her terms for a professional agreement. She reminded herself that this was not blackmail. Rather, it was a way to exchange favors for ongoing support, a step toward a starting job in the governor's office that would help her rise. Carrie never looked back. She had no interest in a traditional life with Raymond. In the governor's office, she found success, much of it due to her hard work. She started as a junior aide, quickly becoming someone that the strong Governor Kincaid relied on more and more. She graduated from Yale Law with honors and transitioned into a full-time position on the governor's staff. Life felt perfect until James O'Reilly arrived. Samuel Gill was banging on Frank Thomas's desk, the former district attorney and well-known defense lawyer. "I can't believe this. Those stockings were clearly planted. The only reason I was in the house was that careless O'Reilly told me the police had stopped searching my trash, and it was safe to come home." The lawyer Thompson looked confused. "Are you saying you were trying to avoid the police on purpose?" "Yes, aren't you listening?" Gill replied. "I spent most of my time out of town so that the police couldn't collect my DNA. The man in the house was a detective working for O'Reilly's sister. It was all to keep them from getting my DNA." "Well, I can't see how that helps us." "You gave the trash bags to the collectors. Don Buono says you gave him the bag yourself and his brother Andy agrees. But the police put the stockings there. This is not a court trial. It's just a hearing to see if you have to give your DNA. Unless someone says the evidence was planted, they can ask for a DNA sample." "Well, can you call the detective O'Reilly hired? He can say I had nothing to do with it." "Okay, what's his name?" "How would I know? Ask O'Reilly." "He won't talk to me because he says there's a conflict." "What about his sister?" "She says she knows nothing about your case." "Can't you make them talk?" "Yes, but if I do, you lose the lawyer-client protection. Even though the sister isn't a lawyer, she was working with him. If you lose that protection, everything they know can be used. I don't think you want that." When Samuel Gill was charged in New Jersey, the local news treated it like a big trial. Jimmy O'Reilly faced criticism again, and Foxy Fitzgerald also got attention. Neither man seemed to be hurt by all the fuss. By the end of the year, Fitzgerald, surprisingly, was a junior partner in his firm, and O'Reilly had brought his clerk on as a full-time attorney to help with the extra work. Carrie Wilson could only shake her head, puzzled by the oddities of the profession she had studied for, but never planned to truly be part of. It seemed better to stay in her quiet office in the Capitol than deal with the strange and unpredictable world of law, where nothing was certain. It was still frustrating to find Tony Greco sitting there, unhappy with lawyers. Shakespeare was right. We should get rid of them all. I don't think he meant that seriously, or he wouldn't have had a villain say it. So, What's bothering you today? She won't leave her difficult husband. She's thinking about having a child with him. I assume we're talking about Mrs. Fitzgerald. How surprising. I can understand why you're upset, Carrie said, trying hard not to smile. The woman loves me, and I'm way better than he is. I don't understand. She has more money than he does, and her father wanted a prenup. Why does she stay with him? Tony complained. Maybe she cares about him, Carrie suggested, noticing Tony wince. Well, I'm just saying it's a possibility. Is that what O'Reilly tells you? That he cares for his wife? Tony sneered at the man he liked just slightly more than Stephen Fitzgerald. He doesn't have to tell me. His actions show it. Some men get attached and can't let go no matter what happens, Carrie replied. While she spoke kindly, she felt confident she could win a debate with Simone O'Reilly. She faced a big decision about entering the competition. The other woman was busy getting ready for her trip abroad. This meant that Jimmy would be free and not tied down, knowing his wife was away. It seemed like a good time, but would she give up what she had? Jimmy wanted a complete commitment. Carrie thought about Tony's situation. He was infatuated with a stunning woman, but her character raised some concerns. Susan Singleton Fitzgerald went after what she wanted. Carrie was aware that Singleton and her father were close allies of her boss, the governor. Tony's feelings were tangled with a strong sense of ambition, yet his feelings for Susan made him forget his usual political judgment. What does she see in him? Tony complained. Tony, it's not a simple question. You have to admit that the man is very attractive, and whether you like it or not, women are drawn to him. Feeling frustrated, Tony left, and Carrie returned to the task at hand. The governor had received an urgent call from the cardinal of the New York diocese. The cardinal wanted a meeting soon. This was unusual so close to Christmas, a hectic time for both of them. The legislature was still in session trying to finalize a spending bill for a pay raise they all wanted. The governor was holding off on signing until new taxes were approved. The legislative process was stuck, and the governor needed to be in Albany. The cardinal insisted on a private meeting in New York. It was a strange request, but Carrie was assigned to set up this meeting. She had to arrange for the use of state aircraft. Organizing state travel always required a lot of paperwork and careful planning. Carrie needed to find state business in Manhattan to justify the trip, or else they would face criticism during tax negotiations. Jimmy O'Reilly spread the tickets in front of him. He thought about how much effort and money he had spent. 4 tickets to the Nutcracker at Lincoln Center. They were priceless to him. He had made these plans. He and Simone had decided on this outing together as a last family event before she would leave again. Jimmy's daughters were excited. They really wanted to see the ballet. Even though Jimmy wasn't a fan of ballet, he was happy to be there with his daughters and his wife. He had been working hard for months to make this Christmas memorable. He and Simone had reached a sort of agreement that didn't fully satisfy either of them. When they were apart, they had an open arrangement. But when Simone returned, she was expected to be a devoted wife. Jimmy could do what he wished as long as he was careful. When Simone was away, she wouldn't inquire about his activities, just as he would keep quiet about hers. Simone thought everything was going well, but Jimmy still had the choice to see other women even after she returned home. She felt this was more of a threat than anything else. Since the governor's ball, Jimmy had not been with Carrie, but Simone knew Carrie was waiting for her chance when the new year came. Simone had made a tough deal with her husband, but she was glad to have him back. They were sharing a bed again, and it was more than just sleeping. But their agreement fell apart quickly. I have to go. It's an important meeting, she said. We promised the girls, didn't we? He replied, his voice showing frustration. Jimmy, please understand. There are people depending on us. I'll be back before Christmas. What about the Nutcracker? You want the girls to see it just with their father? I thought we were trying to create a special memory for them. Now they'll only remember that their mother wasn't there. Go ahead, put the blame on me. I'm a bad wife and mother, but I'll rest easy knowing I did my best to help others. He could only complain. I just wish you would put your family first. Just once. That isn't fair, and you know it. Look, I'll go to New York with you. I can take a flight from JFK on Saturday morning. Then you can take the girls to the ballet in the afternoon like we planned. They ended up taking the train down on Thursday. They spent Friday Christmas shopping with the girls. The mothers and daughters picked out clothes while Dad pretended to be interested. Feeling guilty, Mom spoiled her daughters. They wandered around Times Square and had a late dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant. Back at the hotel, they put the girls in one bed while Mom and Dad prepared to rest in the other. It was just past 11 o'clock when the suite phone rang. Simone was already asleep, getting ready for her early morning trip. "Hello, Jimmy. It's Carrie," the voice on the phone said. "Carrie, what's wrong?" "It's been hard to find you." "You really shouldn't turn off your cell phone," she said. "I didn't. The battery is dead," he replied. "Good. I'd hate to think you're avoiding me," she said with a hint of sarcasm. "Sorry, it must be important. What do you need?" "We need that favor you owe the governor," she said. Something in her tone sent a chill up his spine. "Are you still there?" she asked. "Yes, what do you need?" "I need you out in front of the small hotel you're at in 20 minutes. "Should I wear a coat? I only packed a sports jacket for this trip." "Wear whatever you have, but be outside in 20 minutes. A car will pick you up." "Sorry, but I have to hang up now," she said. The hotel was small and served two purposes. Half the building was home to people who worked in New York City but lived elsewhere. In the quiet evening, the lobby was small and calm, with one young staff member who was surprisingly alert and cheerful. He waved at Jimmy with a big smile. "There's a car waiting just outside," he said. When Jimmy stepped outside, he immediately saw the Lincoln Town car parked by the curb on West 45th Street. Next to it, a tall, older man leaned against the car. "Mr. O'Reilly?" he asked. "Yes," Jimmy replied. "I'm Don Pleasant, special assistant to the governor," he introduced himself, opening the back door. Jimmy got into the back seat, while Pleasant took a seat in the front next to the driver. The car drove quickly onto a busy street, even nearing midnight. They headed uptown, slowing only to go around Central Park. When they reached East 80th Street, they turned right and stopped in front of a 4-story row house. Jimmy had expected to go to the governor's office on the west side, but instead he was taken to a grand residence on the east side just off the park. Don Pleasant guided him inside as the car drove away. The governor's city home felt very impressive, with 2 brownstone row houses connected together. The ground floor was spacious, featuring a large double parlor on one side and a ballroom on the other. Don led Jimmy up the wide central staircase to a small upper parlor. In the room, Edward Kincaid, the governor of New York, sat with his personal assistant, Carrie Wilson. They were sitting in large chairs next to a small oval table. On the table, a document lay face down. "Good evening, Mr. O'Reilly," the governor said. "Thank you for coming," he added. "I was reminded that I owed you one," Jimmy responded, glancing at Carrie, who looked a bit nervous. Don left the room and closed the door, leaving just the 3 of them. "Yes, but thank you anyway. Could you read this?" Kincaid gestured for Jimmy to take one of the chairs around the table. He flipped the document over and slid it toward Jimmy. Jimmy began to skim through the 3-page document like a lawyer, searching for important meanings. He quickly stopped, then started again more slowly from the top as silence filled the room while he read. It was a good 20 minutes before anyone spoke. Jimmy put the document face down on the table and pushed it back toward the governor. "I guess you trust what's in this report since it comes from the source it talks about." "Yes, I believe it's accurate, and I received it directly from the cardinal," he replied. "You must be worried," Jimmy said. Kincaid smiled. "That is a very mild way to describe how I feel right now." "What do you need from me?" Jimmy asked. "I want you to take care of this. Make it disappear." "Why trust this to a lawyer you barely know?" "Simple. You know the people involved. Carrie here trusts you completely, and you owe me a favor," the governor answered. "Getting into something like this is a big ask. I appreciate your help with my wife, but—" "That's not the favor I meant," the governor said as Carrie shifted in her seat. Jimmy raised an eyebrow. The governor continued, "The state police aren't the best investigators, but even the less skilled can find the truth. You cleverly found a way to keep your client, Samuel Gill, from giving his DNA to the police. But that man who works for your sister got rid of the stockings. The police suspect him but haven't asked him about where those stockings came from, and they won't. I've made sure no investigation goes any further. That's the favor I need from you, Attorney O'Reilly. I understand. A tricky situation. No, not at all. I won't reveal your actions. I respect what you did. Given the circumstances, your choices were right. However, you owe me, and I need your help, the governor said, pointing at the document. I get it, Jimmy replied, reaching for the document, folding it, and placing it in his jacket pocket. Thank you. Carrie can drive you back to your hotel, the governor said, standing and offering his hand. The ride back to Jimmy's hotel was quiet. He was lost in thought while she stole glances at him, trying to guess what he was thinking. They were in the small Audi Ray owned, and that she used in the city. He's a good man, she said softly. Jimmy did not answer, and she continued. He's been a good governor and has helped the state a lot. He can do a lot for the country, too. He might never get that chance, he said. You need to help him. I can only do so much. You can't rely on things staying private forever. She nodded, understanding. But you will try your best, she said. He didn't respond, then asked, Do you like the Nutcracker Ballet? Of course, it's wonderful, but tickets are so hard to get. I have tickets. I'm taking my daughters tomorrow afternoon. We have an extra ticket. Do you want to join us? Carrie thought about this and asked, Yes, what are the girls' names? You didn't tell me. Victoria is the oldest, she's 9, and we call her Vicky. Elizabeth is 7, and we call her Beth. What time should I meet you? Let's say noon in front of Lincoln Center. That gives us an hour to find our seats before the show starts. If we're a little late, just wait for us. We're taking my wife to the airport for a flight to Paris at 7:30. All right, I should take you back to your hotel. You'll need to wake up early for that. Jimmy and his daughters walked Simone to the security gate. The lines were long, but it was manageable at 6 in the morning. He watched his wife hug their daughters and promised to return for Christmas. Later, he may need to lower their expectations, just in case their mom didn't make it back in time for the holiday. He then hugged his wife and wished her a safe trip. Things had changed between him and his wife. The family was still together, but their relationship had changed. He led his daughters back through the airport to the taxi area and back into Manhattan to their hotel. He gave them a quick breakfast, and after a little rest, he dressed them for their outing to Lincoln Center. The girls were in good spirits despite their mother leaving. During the taxi ride to the west side of Central Park and the David H. Koch Theater, he told his daughters they were meeting a friend. At first, the girls didn't seem interested, but their minds changed when Carrie arrived. She had been waiting since well before noon by the fountain in the theater plaza, watching each taxi pull in. She felt nervous and reminded herself to calm down. They were just little girls, and he was just a colleague. Carrie tried not to think that Jimmy was also part of a plan. She was sure she would help the governor. Helping him was more than just her job. She was loyal and believed in the man she hoped would one day lead the country. That Jimmy agreed to help only made her believe more in what they were doing. She realized her feelings for him were stronger than she had thought. She fidgeted, feeling anxious as each yellow cab stopped. When their taxi finally pulled up, the man who stepped out looked taller and more charming than she remembered. He guided the two young girls in their pretty dresses toward her. The girls were stunning, with beautiful red blonde hair tied back in simple ponytails. As they got closer, she saw they had their father's bright blue eyes and looked a bit like their mother. These were Simone O'Reilly's daughters, without a doubt. Jimmy approached Carrie with a smile, one arm around each girl's shoulder. Vicky noticed Carrie watching her closely as her father made the introductions. The girls looked a bit nervous, just like Carrie had felt before. This meeting was important. Carrie greeted them warmly, and they accepted her kindness slowly. As a skilled organizer, she knew to stay calm and take her time. Maybe we should go inside, Jimmy suggested, feeling the tension but glad that everyone was being polite, even if it was a little awkward. They bought programs and snacks, then took their seats with the girls sitting close to them, Vicky next to Carrie. They started to talk about the ballet, and Jimmy was mostly just listening. As the afternoon went on, the ladies began to relax with one another, even going to the restroom together during the break. The event turned out to be a wonderful success. Carrie and the girls loved the Nutcracker, while Jimmy enjoyed being with them, even if he did not fully appreciate the ballet. He felt happy. His worries about work faded away, making his home life seem easier. Carrie noticed the smile on Jimmy's face, and it made her feel something special. She had enjoyed the show and felt a little sad that it was ending. She also realized that Vicky and Beth liked spending time with her. As they stood up to leave, she found herself walking closely with Jimmy. She slipped her hand into his, and he squeezed it warmly. Vicky took her other hand, while little Beth held onto her dad. Carrie held onto their hands and didn't want to let go. They walked together through the plaza to where Carrie had parked the car. Soon, she would be letting go of Raymond's car and apartment in Chelsea. He was part of her past. Her future felt uncertain, but now that she had seen a glimpse of it, she wanted to hold on tight. Jimmy looked at her and smiled, and she smiled back. Even if his wife returned, she would find her place taken. If you liked this story or did not, feel free to let me know.